Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto revives his ancestors' technique and builds his own legend as the next shinobi of the masks. Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. A warm breeze blew gently across the treetops of a vast forest, rustling the leaves as it explored each nook and cranny it could reach. The thick foliage prevented the wind from venturing too far below the canopy, but it sent small zephyrs questing wherever the branches thinned even slightly. One such adventure found a small clearing, slowly closing, wherein lay a once beloved shrine. The old wooden structure was losing the war to remain insular from the surrounding forest, and already the evidence of its losses were seen in the broken roof tiles and sagging walls. The small finger of wind played briefly with the long grasses that basked in the rare unobstructed view of the sun before it found the rough wood of the shrine wall broken by an empty window frame. Without hesitation, the wind darted through the opening into the cool darkness beyond. The dust and old leaves within the shrine rose to greet the wind, but it could not tarry. As the small stream of air sought to return to the greater river in the wide open sky, it paused only a moment to caress the many masks that adorned the place of honor in the shrine. The masks danced on their hangings, seemingly eager for attention so long denied. Soon, like the attendants who were now less than a memory, the wind faded and left. The masks returned to their quiet lassitude, the mimicry of life already stilled. Quiet settled back into the shrine as if determined to reclaim its territory after being driven out by the usurping breeze. Skittish as a doe, the quiet once again fled at the sound of a distant thump. Close on its heels, two more thumps were followed by a slightly longer pause before a small object zipped into the clearing, its brief flight of freedom ended by the neglected, now abused, shrine wall. The mask stirred once again, perhaps more than the impact of the object should have allowed. The object, revealed to be a small knife with a wedge-shaped blade and a short, wrapped handle capped by a ring, was in obvious disrepair, and seemed not an odd companion to the dilapidated shrine. The knife's ingress was soon accompanied by muttered curses against its heritage and efficacy, and sounds of the underbrush being roughly inspected for its whereabouts. Before long, a small boy stumbled into the clearing, sweeping through the tall grass in search of the wayward knife. He was unexpectedly a very good fit with the clearing. His blonde hair shone like the sun peering curiously through the gap in the boughs, and his well-worn orange jacket and pants seemed just as gnawed by time as the ancient shrine. His eyes, blue and seemingly clear as the sky above, nonetheless carried a gleam of sadness and neglect, as if the once proud building before him was reflected by his soul. As the boy searched the grass, the knife, dulled from long use and ill care, slipped from its perch in the wall and fell to the earth with a dull thud. The boy, Uzumaki Naruto by name, looked up at the sound and gazed for the first time upon the old sanctuary. His eyes widened in curiosity as he straightened and approached the structure. "What is this place?" he whispered, his normal exuberance damped by the solemn atmosphere surrounding the shrine. His knife forgotten, Naruto stretched his hand out and felt the rough exterior, and he felt compelled to enter. He made his way to the front of the surprisingly large building. The entrance was at the top of a short flight of stairs, and the roof over the entrance was sagging to one side, the supports crumbling and broken. Above the entrance a large spiral symbol was emblazoned on the wood. The boy peered curiously at the symbol, which was the same as the ones embroidered on his jacket, white like the version on his shoulder instead of the red that was centered on his back. The blonde cautiously made his way up the steps, the boards creaking their protest of the sudden use. Inside, the darkness settled, more staunch than the quiet had been, only giving way to the shafts of sunlight that found their way through holes in the roof. Each step released clouds of dust into brief, meandering flight, and Naruto suppressed more than one sneeze when the dust met his nose. As the boy made his way farther into the building, his eyes began to adjust to the dim light. However, though his body traveled through the darkened foyer, his soul seemed on a different path, one never seen but half remembered. Echoes of voices long faded seemed to stir to life again in the dusty darkness, and flashes of memory danced just on the edge of vision. Though the sounds and images were strange to Naruto, they seemed to fill him with a sense of peace and welcome such that he had never felt before, even as he was filled with a more poignant longing than he had ever experienced. The air was heavy, and charged with some unseen energy, like the sky just before a thunderstorm. He seemed to hear and almost remember a once great people, whose fame and legend grew larger and more grand with each generation. There was power here, soaked into the very bones of this place. Power left behind and almost forgotten. Power, but also wisdom, poised to emerge into the world once more. More than once, Naruto hesitated, overwhelmed by the gravitas of the place, but his feet would not halt for long. Soon, he passed into another room, and found himself standing before a wall of intricate design, covered in a mural of dancing flames, and adorned with over a score of antique masks. The masks were all depictions of different animals or people, no two alike, but all seemed to gaze down at him in quiet speculation. Naruto felt those gazes in his very soul, as if he was being weighed and measured to the utmost particle, and he found his breath would not leave him. The feeling, though not quite comfortable, was fleeting, and he sighed in relief even as he thought he heard, or was it felt, a faint whisper that filled the space around him. "Welcome, Uzumaki." Naruto stiffened, the hairs on the back of his neck rising. Who's THTH there? After a few moments of silence, Naruto began to relax again. "Must have been my imagination," he murmured, "this place is kinda creepy." Despite his nervousness, Naruto's natural curiosity won out, and he decided to explore the old shrine a bit more. As he wandered, everything he saw spoke of long years of neglect. The roof was more whole than whole, and thick layers of dust coated every surface. The walls sagged, the floors creaked and groaned, and the once bright hangings and decorations were tarnished and faded. As he gazed up at a particularly large portrait of a severe-looking man with long white hair, squared-off beard, and two curved handles poking up from behind his shoulders, he stepped back to get a better view. A small crack was his only warning before his foot broke through the weakened floorboards, and he stumbled backwards. He hit something solid, then was hit by several solid somethings in return. A cloud of dust billowed up, temporarily blinding him. Naruto groaned and blinked his watering eyes to try to clear them. Eventually, he stood up and turned to see he had fallen into an old bookshelf, and much of the contents were now fallen to the floor where he had lain. Books and scrolls, all in surprisingly good condition, seemed to plead with him to be picked up and read once more. Naruto bent down to sift through the heap half-heartedly. From the still clearly lettered titles he could see, most of the books were journals or records of some kind, many with dates going back dozens, even hundreds of years. Unfortunately, he was not interested in history. After all, what could be important about something that happened so long ago, especially when there was cool jutsu to master? The wind sent another charge through the dilapidated building at just that moment, and the masks in the other room stirred on their hangings once more. One more book dropped from the shelf, straight onto Naruto's unsuspecting head. "Oh! What the heck was that?" Naruto rubbed furiously at his rising lump and glared down at the culprit. The book had fallen to the floor, innocently open to some page near the center. Naruto was about to kick the insolent book into submission, but the picture on the page caught his eye in the fading light. The page depicted a tall, willowy figure dressed in strange clothes, wearing a mask that looked similar to the ones he had left hanging behind. What Naruto found most interesting, though, was the blazing fireball issuing from the figure's mouth, engulfing several smaller figures in more menacing outfits and poses. Curious, Naruto picked up the book and looked for the title. Uzumaki Kichijoten of the No Masks, huh? Naruto read. Wait, Uzumaki? He quickly thumbed through the book, looking for the picture of the figure again. He instead found a half-portrait of whom he assumed to be Kichijoten. She was shown as a young woman, with extremely short red hair and piercing gray eyes and a fine-boned face. She was wearing some kind of loose, thin white shirt with slit sleeves, bound at the wrist, beneath a dark, tight-fitting vest. She was holding a mask with the snarling visage of a wolf or fox in her slender hand. Most importantly, Naruto could see the same spiral crest embroidered on her vest, over her heart, that was above the entrance he had passed through and on his jacket shoulder and back. He knelt down and began sifting through the books on the floor. Uzumaki Kando My Life Among the Waves. The Tales of the Storm Riders by Uzumaki Otoman. A Treatise on Sealing of Great Beasts by Uzumaki Ashina. Uzumaki Tenari. Uzumaki Mito. Uzumaki. 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 Naruto could not believe what he was seeing. Every book and scroll was written by or about an Uzumaki. Could these people be his relatives? His ancestors? His family? All his life, he had been told he was an orphan, and never had he heard about an Uzumaki family. From the size of the building and the amount of books and scrolls on this shelf alone, the Uzumaki were large enough to be a full clan, perhaps rivaling even the largest clans of Konoha for size and history. Naruto's eyes once again blurred with tears, though the dust had long since settled. All the anger and harsh words he had endured from the villagers came to his mind once again. The great, gnawing loneliness that grew in his heart daily ached as he saw and felt their cold, empty glares. He could never understand why they hated him so much. Heaving a great sniff, Naruto clutched several books to his chest. He finally knew. He had a family. He wasn't just some kid that nobody wanted to even exist. He came from somewhere. He imagined he could almost feel many arms encircling him in an embrace that spanned generations. The darkness was now filled with a warmth and peace he didn't notice before. Even though no one else was in the shrine, he didn't feel alone. Was this what having a real home felt like? He had no idea how long he knelt on the dusty floor while his thoughts dwelt among the memories of his ancestors, but when he came back to himself, the sun had set, and the shrine was shrouded in full dark. Gathering up as many books as he could carry, Naruto slowly stood and made his way back towards the entrance on tingling legs. He had no memory of the trip back to his apartment. His attention was completely focused inwards. Had he been more aware, he would have seen the strange looks from the few villagers still out and about. After all, the village prankster wasn't often seen with his arms laden with books and scrolls, especially so late at night. More than once, a man or woman started to take a step forward, intent on reprimanding the brat for stealing from the library. But each time, his vacant, trance-like stare gave them pause until he had already passed. Once he arrived, he absently kicked the door closed behind him, set his cargo on his rickety table, and sat down to read. The next morning, Naruto woke with a start. His neck and back were aching terribly, probably from the unusual sleeping arrangement he had made last night. He had been so engrossed in the books he had found that he hadn't noticed the time passing, and had fallen asleep at his small, rickety table. He groaned as he stood to stretch and work out the kinks, and the chair creaked in agreement. He froze in mid-stretch as a thought occurred to him. Didn't he have a team meeting today? Ag. I'm late. He scrambled to grab his gear and sandals, pausing only briefly to stuff the book he was reading into the equipment pouch at his waist, then jumped from his open window to the nearby rooftop. The mid-morning village bustle was lost on him as he sped toward the training ground where his team was hopefully in a forgiving mood. He bounded from roof to roof where he could, and blitzed through the crowded streets where he couldn't. More than one villager shouted angrily at him when he wasn't quite nimble enough to avoid bumping into them, but he barely took notice. He couldn't stop going over what he had learned the previous day. I can't believe I come from a clan, he thought. Why hadn't anyone ever told him? He didn't remember ever hearing about an Uzumaki clan in class. The Hokage had never said anything either, despite Naruto's repeated questions about who his parents were. That stung more than he cared to admit. He was hurt that something he so desperately wanted to know was kept from him, especially by one of the few people that would even give him the time of day. He resolved to confront the old man about it as soon as his team meeting was over. His thoughts turned to what he had been reading. The book on sealing by Uzumaki Ashina was far too complex for him to make much sense of, but he wondered if the technique was related to the seal on his stomach that held the kyubi. He had set that one aside to read later, after he found something a bit more basic. There were a couple of journals that he had thumbed through, but they hadn't held his attention for long. He had then turned to the book about Kichijoten that had first piqued his interest. She had apparently been a strong kunoichi known for her use of several no masks, porcelain masks carved or painted into various likenesses, hence her moniker. He hadn't been able to find out why she seemed to have so many different masks before he had fallen asleep, but she had made a point of describing several in detail. As the training ground came into view, he breathed a sigh of relief that Kakashi-sensei was still absent. His two teammates were there, however, waiting for the day's training to begin. Sasuke was leaning against one of the well-used training posts, brooding, his high-collared, dark blue shirt partially obscuring his nearly perpetual scowl. His head was pitched forward so his black hair hung past his forehead protector and shaded his eyes. He seemed to be ignoring his female teammate, but a near imperceptible twitch at the corner of his eye betrayed his annoyance. Sakura was sitting on the grass next to him, the hem of her red dress arranged neatly on the grass. She was twirling a strand of her pink hair in her fingers, vainly trying to get the last Uchiha's attention. Naruto skidded to a stop, and braced his hands on his knees as he panted from his cross-village sprint. Both his teammates looked up at his appearance. "Nah, are you too?" Sakura growled, jumping to her feet with her fists clenched. "You're late." Naruto straightened, rubbing his neck sheepishly. "Heh, sorry Sakura-chan, I slept in." Sasuke grunted in derision, shaking his head slightly. Naruto was about to launch into a tirade at his teammate/rival, but a hand lightly patting his head stopped him short. "Well, Naruto," a calm voice drawled, "nice of you to finally join us." Naruto's ire was immediately turned on his gray-haired sensei as he spun and pointed accusingly up at him. "What do you mean, Kakashi-sensei? You're even later than I am." Kakashi continued as if he hadn't heard Naruto. "Punctuality is very important for a ninja." Kakashi raised one finger, his eye closed as he imparted his great wisdom upon his young students. "It shows respect to your employer and reflects on the reputation of the village. Please don't make a habit of being late." Naruto growled at the hypocrisy of his one-eyed teacher, but just huffed and turned away, pouting and folding his arms petulantly. Now, don't be like that," Kakashi again patted Naruto's spiky head. "Why don't we get started with some team-building exercises, then we'll head to the mission office for the day's mission." This drew a collective groan from all three of the genin, plus some dramatic head-hanging from the blonde and pinkette, but they reluctantly trudged off to begin the training. Kakashi chuckled as he reached back to retrieve his favorite orange book. He should be able to finish a couple of chapters before lunch at this rate. Several hours later, Naruto flopped on the cool grass, sweaty and panting. Nearby, Sasuke and Sakura were in similar states of exhaustion. Kakashi perched atop one of the training posts, nose deep in a familiar orange book. He glanced up at the sound of his last student finally collapsing. Well, if you three are tired already, we may have to start doing more endurance training. He cut off at the surprisingly large flash of killing intent emanating from the three genin. But I guess you can have a short break before we head to the mission office. He turned back to his book, a perverse giggle escaping as he turned the page. Naruto glared at his lazy sensei, but the sight of the book reminded him of his own reading material. He groaned slightly as he sat up and retrieved it from his pouch. In the bright midday sun, he was able to get a much better look at it. The cover was well-worn leather with silver embossing on the front declaring it as Kichijoten's personal journal. He flipped open the book to search for the last thing he could remember reading. Kichijoten had a very fine, elegant hand. The writing was crisp and clear, just like the other books he had found, and a sharp contrast with Naruto's own abysmal penmanship. The pages themselves were made of a high-quality parchment, and there seemed to be very little wear on them. The journal spoke about Kichijoten's life as a kunoichi of Uzumaki. She had been the second of 3 children, and only girl. Naruto had skimmed through most of her early life until she had become a chunin. At that point, she had begun using masks to augment her techniques. Naruto's eyes widened as he read how Kichijoten used seals during the mask construction to imbue them with properties that helped her channel her chakra more efficiently and quickly. As her skill and experience grew, so too did the complexity of the seals she used in her masks. She was eventually able to use the masks to change her chakra nature to any of the 5 basic elements: wind, lightning, earth, water, and fire. From there, her reputation had begun to take off, and she soon became known as the shinobi of the masks. Naruto paused for a moment, thinking of the masks he had seen hanging in the shrine the day before. Had any of those belonged to Kichijoten? He filed that away to investigate later, and dove back into Kichijoten's story. Soon after seeing her moniker begin to appear in the bingo books of rival villages, she began to expand her skill with seals, and thereby increase her repertoire of masks. She was constantly striving for perfection in everything she did. She learned that through her masks, she could copy some of the skills she had seen from other ninja. It seemed she had discovered a way to create seals that would help her improve her taijutsu as well, though her explanation was a bit over Naruto's head. He's reading? It wasn't long before Kichijoten had been promoted to Jonin, and she became even more feared and respected among rival villages. Her use of seals was prodigious, and some in the village had begun calling her the second coming of Ashina. Had she changed her focus to seals generally, there was little doubt in many minds that she would quickly surpass her mentor. Kichijoten's true passion, however, remained with her masks and seeking out new styles and techniques she could incorporate into her arsenal. Book is it? Hey! NAR. The tone of the entries started to change. War was raging ever closer to Kichijoten's home, and she was needed more frequently to defend her village's borders. She lamented the constant fighting and bloodshed, but she wouldn't allow harm to come to those she loved. Even when the Second War was declared over, the fighting never really stopped. Naruto. He was broken out of the book spell by a foolproof method, administered with vigor by his pink-haired teammate, a punch to the head. Ow! Sakura-chan. What was that for? Naruto rolled on the ground, clutching his head in pain. The kunoichi huffed, We've been trying to get your attention for 5 minutes. Pay attention, you knucklehead. Naruto continued to rub his aching skull, and grinned sheepishly at his team. Oh, sorry guys, he chuckled, guess I was kinda focused. Sakura hesitated, curiosity warring with annoyance in her green eyes. The war was brief, and curiosity emerged victorious. What are you reading anyway? Sasuke was standing with his back turned, pocketed hands and feigning indifference, but his ears pricked up at Sakura's question. Even Kakashi put his own reading away to hear Naruto's answer. The orange-clad blonde jumped to his feet, the abuse to his head already forgotten. It's a journal I picked up yesterday in this creepy old shrine out in the woods, he bubbled. It's by a kunoichi named Uzumaki Kichijoten. She was called the Shinobi of the Masks, and she lived in a place called Uzumaki, and she was really strong, and the best part was, she was an Uzumaki. The whole place was filled with stuff about Uzumakis, so they must have been a clan, right? I wonder why she didn't live in Konoha? Maybe there are more in this Uzushio place. Whoa, slow down, Naruto. Sakura pleaded, what are you even talking about? What shrine? Kakashi jumped down from his perch and walked over, putting his book away. I think Naruto means the Uzumaki Mask Shrine. I thought that was destroyed in the Kyuubi attack. Naruto's eyes widened as he turned to his teacher. You know about the Uzumakis? Well, yes, some. They were a quite well-known clan several years ago, Didn't they teach you about them in the academy? His students all responded with confusion, glancing at each other. Kakashi sighed, though inwardly he was shocked. Kushina would be livid. The Uzumakis were an old clan, distantly related to the Senju, and they were close allies with Konoha since the founding of the village. Senju? Sakura's mental database word, you mean they were related to the first and second Hokages? Naruto looked starry-eyed up at the Hokage monument, distantly visible over the treetops and roofs of the village. The mountain's sheer face was carved with the likenesses of the 4 leaders of the village hidden in the leaves, and his clan was related to the first 2. His attention snapped back to his sensei as he replied to Sakura's question. Yes, Sakura. The Uzumaki and the Senju were cousin clans from before the founding of the ninja village system. In fact, Uzumaki Mito was the wife of Senju Hashirama, the first Hokage. The Uzumaki were invited to join Konoha, but they declined. Instead, they decided to settle in the land of whirlpools, and founded Yuzushiogakure, the village hidden in the swirling tides. They remained close with Konoha, however, and provided assistance through the First and Second Shinobi World Wars. They were known and feared for their mastery of Fuinjutsu, ninja sealing techniques. Sakura looked puzzled. Sensei, why do you keep saying were? Did something happen to them? Kakashi sighed again. Yes. Between the Second and Third Wars, an alliance of 2 great villages and several smaller villages invaded the land of whirlpools and destroyed Uzushio. The Uzumaki were trapped, and few, if any, were able to escape. The survivors of the invasion were scattered. Naruto here is the only Uzumaki I've heard of in quite some time. Naruto's excitement took a mortal blow from Kakashi's words. To find out he comes from a clan, and almost immediately learn his clan is gone, was devastating to the young ninja. He bowed his head, eyes shadowed. At his side, his clenched fist trembled as he struggled against the tears that threatened to escape. He screwed his eyes shut, a reinforcement to his determination to stop the flood. The next voice he heard shocked him, even as it threw a lifeline to his flagging will. Wait, if the Uzumakis lived in a different country, how did Naruto end up here? He can't be a descendant of Lady Mito, can he? Sasuke spoke up for the first time that day, no stranger to losing a clan. Kakashi rubbed the back of his head. Now he'd done it. There were some things he couldn't say, not now, but looking at his blonde student, he knew he had to say something. He cleared his throat, nervously. No, Lady Mito's children took the Senju name. As for Naruto's parents, there have been other Uzumaki who immigrated to Konoha from Uzushio, prior to the invasion, so he would have to be related to one of them. Kakashi saw Naruto's excitement being its resurrection, and knew what would come next. And before you ask, Naruto, I can't be expected to know the name of every person who moves to Konoha from a distant land. We are a prosperous village, after all. Sasuke and Sakura seemed satisfied with the impromptu history lesson, and Naruto was mollified enough that he was back to his old self. Kakashi sighed once more, though this time in relief. Well, that was a bit more than I expected for the morning training. Let's head over to the mission office and see what's available. Kakashi clapped once and turned to lead the way back to the village proper, his 3 students falling into step behind him. Naruto looked up into the clear blue sky, determination ablaze once more in his eyes as he felt Kichijoten's book tucked firmly in his pouch. He raised one finger, defiantly to the heavens. I'll be the greatest ninja the world has ever seen. I will make my village and my clan proud. He did not shout, as he would normally when making such a declaration, but his voice carried more gravitas than his teammates had ever heard before. I'll bring the Uzumaki back. I swear it. The sun shone brilliantly down on the busy village below. Its gentle rays offered a quiet benediction of mid-spring in contrast to the more firm hand it will take once the season turns to summer. The light streamed through the 6 large windows of the Konoha mission office, wrapping everything in its warm embrace. Several ninja teams were waiting patiently as scrolls and reports changed hands with each issuance and completion from those at the front of the queue. In one particularly friendly patch of sunlight stood a quiet young girl, newly minted as a genin. She basked in the warmth of the sun, despite already wearing a cream-colored jacket with fur trim. She followed the grained patterns of the hardwood floor with her pearlescent eyes as she listened to the steady murmur of the reporting teams ahead. She glanced up through her dark blue bangs at her own team. Kiba stood with pocketed hands, his faithful Nin pup Akamaru in his customary place atop Kiba's head. Kiba had his own fur-trimmed hood down, allowing his spiky brown hair to peer through Akamaru's white, though he kept the gray jacket fully closed. His face was in a mask of bored acceptance instead of his usual Inuzuka smirk. Their sensei, Kurenai, stood patiently in her customary wrap dress with the crimson sleeve that matched her eyes. Despite her outward professionalism, those who knew her well could see the hints of boredom in her posture and gaze. The girls suppressed a giggle at her team and their sensei. The young ninjas each sported a fur-trimmed jacket in defiance of the heat. Their sensei, a tall, raven-haired woman, was the only one dressed for a warm land of fire spring, wearing her favorite rap-style dress with one crimson sleeve. That just left Shino, her last teammate. She didn't have to look far to find him, though. He was examining a small insect crawling among the leaves of one of the potted plants, his high collar and sunglasses obscuring nearly all of his features, though his spiked brown hair was visible above his Konoha forehead protector. The boy reached out one pale finger to the insect, gently inviting. The invitation was immediately accepted, and the small traveler crawled along Shino's finger, happily. Hyuga Hinata smiled quietly to herself, content in her observations of her team. She was grateful to be placed with such strong genin, and her sensei had been looking after her training since long before the team was formed. Her smile faltered at the memory of why someone outside of the Hyuga clan had been asked to train the clan heiress. Her father's stern eyes, always so full of disappointment when he looked at her, changed to the even worse apathy once Kurenai had agreed to take Hinata on. Hinata was pulled from the painful memory by the arrival of another team, opening the door behind her. She turned curious, and her breath hitched at the sight of the orange-clad blonde striding through the door. He was flanked by his two teammates, Haruno Sakura and Uchiha Sasuke, and tailed by their sensei, Hatake Kakashi, his nose buried in his usual orange book. Hinata felt her face redden at the sight of the young Uzumaki, but the rising heat was quickly doused by the cool curiosity of something quite unusual for the boy. He, too, was reading as he walked, though this one was a brown, leather-bound book that appeared to be fairly old. She wondered what in the book could have captured Naruto's mercurial attention so completely, but the thought of asking him about it brought the flush back to her cheeks tenfold. Her blush intensified further when Naruto's team took up position in the queue directly behind her own team, the blonde himself stopping right next to her, though he was oblivious to her proximity, lost as he was in the pages. Kurenai noticed Hinata's sudden stiffening, and glanced back to see what had caused it. When she set eyes upon the blonde, understanding sparked across her eyes. Her inner puck grinned mischievously, anxious for an opportunity to break up the tedium of line waiting. "Hello, Kakashi-senpai," she narrowed her eyes at the offensive book in hands, but continued on. "Here to report or pick up?" "Pick up, Kurenai-san," the silver-haired jonin replied without looking up. "Busy morning of training. I thought a nice mission would be good for a break." Kurenai, knowing of Kakashi's notorious laziness, opened her mouth to reply. She was interrupted, however, by her more boisterous student. "Hey Shino, check it out!" Kiba called, "Naruto's reading. I didn't know he could read." Naruto looked up at the sound of his name, but his mind was still walking with Kichijoten. "Huh?" He blinked owlishly. "Did you say something, Kiba?" Kakashi beamed with pride in his now favorite student, and Kurenai stifled her laughter with a cough. "Naruto-san, what book are you reading?" she asked, genuinely curious. The sun shining through the windows could have gone black without notice for the light of excitement that shone from Naruto's face at the raven-haired jonin's question. "It's a journal from my ancestor," he began, waving his arms. "She was a really strong ninja from Yazushio. She used masks and stuff, but not like Kakashi-sensei, more like the ANBU guys." Hinata listened intently as Naruto went on to describe his discovery of an old shrine near the outskirts of the village that had once belonged to the Uzumaki clan. She frowned, she didn't remember hearing about an Uzumaki clan in Konoha. She waited, a surprisingly long time, for Naruto to stop for a breath in his description of the shrine and what he had found inside. Kurenai-sensei? She faltered when 6.5 sets of eyes turned to her. Kurenai knelt down to be eye level with the shy Hyuga. "Yes, Hinata-chan?" The heiress swallowed nervously, but focusing on her sensei helped. "I haven't heard of the Uzumaki clan, are they?" Kurenai smiled at her student, guessing her unfinished question. "No, the Uzumaki are not a clan affiliated with Konoha, though there have been a few Uzumaki who have lived here." She looked to Kakashi, "Though I must admit, I don't know much about them myself." "Kakashi-sensei told us the Uzumaki came from the land of whirlpools," Sakura chimed in. She went on to summarize what they had learned just that morning. She glanced at Naruto when the story reached its depressing conclusion. Naruto's exuberance was once again dampened by the sad tale of his clan, but his resolve burned in his eyes even brighter. A resolve that did not escape Hinata's notice. Naruto-kun comes from a clan, but how horrible must it be for him to learn of his family only to hear they are all gone? She thought. She longed to be able to comfort him in some way, but every time she tried to form the words, her thoughts would stumble over themselves and become so tangled, she couldn't possibly hope to give them voice. Seeing Naruto's determined spirit shine in his gaze bolstered her own flagging will. "And Naruto-kun, I'm sorry," her breath caught when the blonde turned to her, and surprise blue met true compassion, for maybe the first time, in pale lavender. Naruto chuckled nervously, rubbing the back of his head. He wasn't sure what the look coming from Hinata was, so he decided to react the way he did whenever confronted with the unfamiliar. He scrunched up his eyes in a toothy smile, mask of bravado slipping naturally into place. Heh, don't worry about it, Hinata. I'm gonna bring them back. Hinata's heart nearly broke at the appearance of the mask, but Naruto's confident exclamation provided a lifeline to cling to. She resolved to be the support Naruto needed, to be someone he could trust without the mask. Her thoughts were interrupted by a call from the mission desk. Team 8, we are ready for your report. Kurenai straightened and started forward, Shino and Kiba falling into step behind her. Hinata paused for a moment, pressing her index fingers together, as she glanced to Naruto one more time. A small cough from her sensei ushered her forward, however, and she stepped quickly up beside her teammates. She listened with half an ear as Shino gave the report on their dog-walking mission in his calm, efficient manner, her thoughts on the recent revelation of Naruto's heritage. Her team was soon dismissed, and Kurenai instructed them to return to their training ground for evaluation on their mission performance. As they left, Hinata saw Naruto once again absorbed in his book, and a small, shy smile graced her face. Team 7. Naruto was once again pulled from his book as his team moved forward to receive their mission assignment for the day. He slipped the book back into his pouch before looking up at the table, behind which sat several chunin, including his academy teacher, Yumino Irika. He also saw the Sandaime Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, and remembered his axe in need of grinding. The old ninja noticed the flash of irritation in the younger, but made no comment as the available missions were listed for Team 7's selection. Kakashi noticed Naruto's ire as well, and a sudden puckishness overcame him. He interrupted the recitation with a cough. Excuse me, Hokage-sama, but I think Naruto here might have already found a mission for us. He gestured to the shortest member of his team. The Sandaime raised one wizened brow. Oh? And what might that be? It seems the Uzumaki mask shrine survived the Kyuubi attack, and Naruto stumbled across it yesterday. Sarutobi didn't bother to hide his shock, his other brow rising to meet its brother. He understood where Naruto's anger was coming from, now, but he motioned for Kakashi to continue amidst the murmurs of the chunin seated at the table. From Naruto's description, the shrine is in understandable disrepair. I propose Team 7 investigate the shrine to determine the condition of the structure and its contents. Please excuse me, Hokage-sama. Irika motioned for his leader's attention. I didn't know the Uzumaki had a shrine in Konoha. What does Kakashi-san mean? It survived. Irika-sensei, you knew there was an Uzumaki clan? Why didn't you tell me? Naruto was hurt his former teacher also kept this information from him. He glared back to the Hokage. Why didn't anyone ever tell me? Irika blanched. Naruto, I. Sarutobi cleared his throat, desperately wishing he had his pipe. This was not how he'd hoped this would happen. Naruto-kun, he began, the history of the Uzumaki clan connection with Konoha is included with the history portion of the first half of the academy curriculum. By the time you got to his class, they should have already been covered. Hokage-sama, Sakura raised her hand, confused. We were never taught about the Uzumaki clan. We didn't even know they were a clan, only that the Shodaime was married to Uzumaki Mido. And that was only mentioned once. The Hokage was nearly apoplectic. He turned to Irika. Irika, did you know about this? The academy instructor sputtered. Hokage-sama, I assure you, as far as I know, the curriculum is that same as when I was a student. As you said, I didn't cover the Uzumaki connection to Konoha in my class because I assumed it was covered in the first 2 years. And is Onanabe Getora still the junior academy instructor? Yes, Hokage-sama. Sarutobi sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. He made a mental note to have Getora brought to his office for a talk about his performance of his duties. He turned back to Naruto, whose glare had lessened, but still persisted. I am sorry, Naruto-kun. It appears that a portion of your education was neglected. I trust, based on your reaction, Kakashi-kun has rectified this error? The silver-haired Jonin nodded, but Naruto was not satisfied. That still doesn't explain why you never told me, old man. Naruto. Irika scolded, don't speak to the Hokage like that. Sarutobi raised his hand, placatingly. It's all right, Irika-kun. Naruto has a right to be angry. He turned to the blonde, again. I must apologize, Naruto-kun. I assumed you had been taught about the Uzumaki already, and I felt there was nothing else I could tell you. Allow me to correct some of that now. Naruto folded his arms, foot-tapping impatiently as the Hokage leaned back, looking to the ceiling for a moment. He again wished for his pipe. After he had gathered his thoughts, he looked back down, intentionally meeting Naruto's gaze. Before I begin, would you kindly tell me what Kakashi-kun told you about the Uzumaki? I don't wish to repeat what has already been said. Naruto looked to the side, still hiding his hurt. He said the Uzumaki were a clan from the land of whirlpools. They were like cousins or something to the Senju before Konoha was founded, but they didn't want to leave their home to join the village. He told us that sometimes an Uzumaki would come to live here, like Mito-sama, but the village where they lived was destroyed and the Uzumaki were wiped out. Fists clenched at his side and trembling, Naruto looked back to the Hokage, desperation and pleading hope warring across his face. Yes, that is correct, the old Hokage intoned, quietly. The Uzumaki were a noble clan, known for their potent life force and chakra, as well as being the foremost Fuinjutsu masters in the world. In fact, Uzumaki Ashina shared much of his knowledge with Shodame-sama, Senju Hashirama, and is known as the father of Konoha's sealing techniques. Uzumaki Ashina, the name tickled Naruto's memory. Oh! He wrote one of the books that was in the shrine. Something about a sealing treat? The Sandaime nodded. If there's a book on sealing written by Uzumaki Ashina, you would do well to learn from it. You will not find a more talented master of that most complex art. Naruto's eyes shone like stars at that statement, and his pure excitement lightened Sarutobi's heart. Perhaps this will be for the best, after all. The Uzumaki continued to aid Konoha throughout our early history. In fact, Hashirama-sama incorporated the Uzumaki clan symbol into the Konoha emblem, as well as the standard shinobi uniform, as a symbol of our friendship with them. Naruto reached up to the battered forehead protector that Iruka had given the night he became a genin. His fingers lightly traced the leaf symbol with its familiar swirl center. Seeing his audience so enthralled, Sarutobi smiled to himself. I've still got it. Now we come to the answer to Iruka-kun's question. The Uzumaki Mask Shrine. When Hashirama-sama's brother, Tobirama-sensei, became the Nidaime Hokage, the Uzumaki built a shrine in Konoha to commemorate their bond with the late Shodame. And I believe, give Mito-sama some connection with her homeland, as comfort for the passing of her husband. Over the years, Mito-sama collected copies of many of the writings of and about the Uzumaki, and placed them in the shrine. Among the scrolls and books were also masks constructed by the Uzumaki, though I do not know what purpose they served. Mito-sama and the Uzumaki that had immigrated to Konoha used the shrine to remember their home and heritage, so I suspect the masks reminded them of their culture. The masks were given a place of prominence within the shrine, so it became known as the Uzumaki Mask Shrine. Sarutobi paused for a moment, preparing for the sad turn the tale was about to take. When Uzushio was destroyed, the few Uzumakis in the village were devastated. However, the Third Shinobi World War started soon after, so there was little time to mourn, and even less time to search for survivors. If any Uzumaki survived outside of Konoha, we could never find them. When the war permitted, the Konoha Uzumaki requested permission to return to Uzushio to gather what they could of their clan's legacy. Most had been lost during the invasion and the intervening time, but what remained was brought back to Konoha and stored within the Uzumaki shrine. Once more, the Sandaime's gaze drifted to the ceiling, then the Kyuubi attacked. The destruction wrought by the beast devastated the village and destroyed much of the surrounding area. The Uzumaki fought the beast, but in the end they perished. I thought that the light of the once proud clan had been forever extinguished, and the world was diminished for it. Old eyes drifted back down to meet new, and then, you appeared, my boy. I was told your name was Uzumaki Naruto, and you were the last hope for the future of the Uzumaki clan. Naruto heaved a great sniff, but he dared not blink for fear unleashing his welling tears as the Hokage finished his tale. The somber mood was broken by one of the other Chunin sitting at the mission table. Excuse me, Hokage-sama, but if this shrine did survive, and it still holds remnants of such a skilled group of ninjas, it could prove to be a valuable asset to the village. What? Naruto roared. There's no way I'd let you take anything from my family's shrine. Once again, an unexpected voice responded to Naruto's emotion, this time dousing his rage. It would be treason to remove anything from the Uzumaki shrine, Sasuke said coolly, eyeing the offending Chunin. If Naruto is the sole surviving member of the Uzumaki clan, and since he is a ninja of Konoha, that would place the Uzumaki clan under the protection of the Konoha clan pact. No member of the village may lay claim to any clan property, or holding while any living member of that clan remains affiliated with the village. If the village were to try to take anything from the Uzumaki clan, the other clans would revolt. Naruto was shocked at Sasuke's support for the second time that day. Maybe he wasn't such a jerk after all. When Sasuke saw Naruto's look, he grunted, and turned away, spiking Naruto's irritation with his attitude. Perhaps not. The Hokage lifted both hands up, palms forward. No one, he shot an angry look at the Chunin down the table, who suddenly found his paperwork very interesting, is suggesting the village take anything from the Uzumaki clan, Sasuke-kun. However, I believe sending Team 7 to investigate the shrine more fully is an excellent idea. You are to make note of the condition of the shrine and the grounds surrounding, and to assist Naruto-kun in making a full inventory of the contents. This will be a D-rank mission, paid from the village clan support fund. You will have 3 days to complete the mission. Iruka quickly copied the Hokage's instructions onto a blank mission scroll before presenting it to Kakashi. The 3 genin and 1 jonin bowed Tachi Hokage, and taking the skull, turned to begin their mission. Naruto-kun, Sarutobi called as they reached the door. The young blonde turned, frowning. If you wish to make note of any needed repairs to the shrine, you may submit a request for financial aid from the village to fund the restoration. Seeing the Uzumaki mask shrine return to its former glory would be a joy, indeed, and it would go far to remind the village of one of its oldest allies. Naruto's eyes softened at the Hokage's sincere smile, and he managed a small smile in return. He nodded once, then turned to follow his team through the door. Naruto led his team through the bustling streets of afternoon Konoha. His fingers itched to grab Kichijoden's journal, but a nagging thought kept him from reaching to his pouch. Why had Sasuke spoken up, not just in the mission office, but at the training ground as well? He glanced back at the last Uchiha. Sasuke was walking along, hands still in his pockets, customary scowl frozen to his face. He seemed lost in his own world, far away gaze never quite focusing on his surroundings. The only indication that he was even aware of his surroundings was a slight twitch to his eye whenever they passed a group of girls. It seemed their quiet whispers and giggles, punctuated by the occasional infatuated squeal, was the only thing that could break Sasuke's musings. Naruto snorted. What did they see in him, anyway? He barely even looked at them, and they still fawned all over him. Sasuke must have felt Naruto's gaze, or at least heard his snort, because he turned to stare back in challenge. The confrontation didn't last long, however, before Sasuke smirked and deliberately broke the stare in clear dismissal. Naruto turned his eyes forward again, growling to himself. That jerk, Sasuke, he thought. Who cares why he said what he did? He was probably just trying to make me look stupid. It's not my fault I didn't know any of that clan law stuff. He angrily tore Kichijoden's journal from his pouch and opened it to a random page. The remainder of the trek to the Uzumaki shrine passed in silence, save for a futile attempt from Sakura to engage Sasuke in conversation, and the occasional perverse giggle from their sensei. When the 4 ninjas arrived at the shrine clearing, it looked much the same as when Naruto had left it the night before. The wind blew lazily through the clearing, only half-heartedly brushing the leaves and grass before departing. The sun shone merrily, but a jealous cloud was vainly trying to keep the light to itself. Kakashi looked up at the dilapidated structure, whistling at its condition. Well, now, it looks like it didn't escape all the damage from the Nine Tails' attack, after all. I'm sorry, Naruto, this might be a bigger job than I thought. Sakura looked askance at the crumbling entrance. Is it even safe to go in there? It looks like it could collapse at a harsh tone. Nah, it's fine, Sakura-chan, Naruto affirmed. I was in there for a while yesterday. Sasuke grunted, but it seemed more out of habit than haughtiness. Flashes of his own clan compound overlaid themselves on the shrine. Memories of that night surging upward from their prison in his mind. He quickly rallied himself, and counterattacked with vigor, his vendetta against that man leading the charge. He took the stairs like an enraged chef handling eggs, and stepped across the threshold. Naruto bounded up the stairs after him, excitement lending weight to his steps rather than anger, his remaining teammate and sensei following close behind. Inside the shrine was as Naruto had left it the previous day. The darkness still clung stubbornly to every corner it could, giving way only to the sunlight peeking through the perforated roof and the beams from the ninjas' flashlights. Naruto paused, half expecting the same weightiness from the atmosphere of the shrine. After a moment, he continued forward, leading the way through the foyer. The flashlights revealed more of the interior than Naruto had seen the night before. Portraits of prominent clan members and leaders lined the wall, along with a large tapestry depicting what Naruto assumed to be Uzushio. Steep hills surrounded the village, leaving the buildable area of the island quite restricted. The limited space led the buildings to grow tall, reaching for the sky. A picturesque waterfall laughed its way down the northern rim of hills until it formed a wide river bisecting the village. Bridges spanned its width, both at ground level and at various heights between the towers that marched along the banks. Rooftop gardens lent a lush and colorful splash to the village palette, and fountains of sparkling water adorned nearly every intersection. Oh, it's beautiful, Sakura sighed. That waterfall looks so romantic. Don't you think so, Sasuke-kun? When the object of her affection didn't even grunt in acknowledgement, she deflated. The 4 continued their investigation of the shrine. When they reached the wall where the masks were displayed, Naruto again felt the weight of the mask's gaze, but he felt far more comfortable knowing this was his family shrine. Kakashi looked thoughtful as he examines the masks. Naruto, what was the name of your ancestor who wrote that journal, again? Kichijoten, Naruto replied. Kichijoten of the no masks. The masked jonin tapped his chin. Something was just tickling his memory, but it was ephemeral as the scent of a dream. The more he tried to trail it, the more faint it became, until he questioned whether it was ever there in the first place. Kakashi mentally shook his head clear. Alright team, let's get started. We have 3 days to complete the mission. Sakura, start with the masks, get the number and a short descriptor of each. Sasuke, start outside, get the condition of the exterior and the grounds. When you are finished, meet Sakura in the foyer and begin making note of the condition of the interior. Naruto, you and I will go through the rest of the shrine and get an idea of the layout. The 3 genin snapped to attention before moving to their respective tasks. Naruto led Kakashi to where he had found the journals. The added illumination from the ninja's flashlights revealed the room to be a small library or study. Bookshelves lined the walls, with one window on the eastern wall giving a now painless view of the Hokage mountain peering over the surrounding forest. A decrepit desk leaned near the window, 2 legs along with the chair conspicuously absent. Kakashi could see that sitting at the desk would afford a view of the window as well as the portrait of the severe-looking man which had played a part in Naruto's discovery of the journals the previous night. That must be Uzumaki Ashina, Kakashi mentioned, moving over to take a closer look at the portrait. You mean that guy old man Hokage talked about? The ceiling guy? That ceiling guy was close friends with the Shodai and Nidaime Hokages, and taught them most of what they knew about sealing. In fact, he is also known as the father of Konoha's Fuinjutsu. Naruto whistled lowly, impressed, though to save face, he began looking more closely at the bookshelves while his sensei finished inspecting the portrait. Most of the contents were journals and records of the lives and accomplishments of the Uzumaki, though he did find a small collection of scrolls containing what looked like ninja techniques. Hey, Kakashi-sensei. Look at this. Kakashi moved over to his blonde student. Looks like you found some training scrolls. He shined his light at the open scroll Naruto held out. This one seems to be about some chakra control exercises taught to novices, probably to get children ready for the academy ninja training. Naruto deflated a bit, hoping he'd found some awesome secret clan jutsu. The rest of the scrolls contained similarly basic exercises, though one did have the beginning forms of a taijutsu style Kakashi was not familiar with. This one might be a clan taijutsu style though. Naruto perked up at that. Can you teach it to me, sensei? I can try my best, but I haven't seen this style before, and the last person who would have known it has been dead for 12 years. I also have a friend who specializes in taijutsu. He may be willing to give us a hand. Kakashi shuddered a bit at that thought, though. He hoped his friend could keep his youthfulness restrained enough to not make this a part of their ongoing competition. Kakashi and Naruto continued their exploration of the shrine, finding several storerooms containing more pictures and tapestries, along with some vases, statuettes, and even a trunk filled with clothes of different fabrics and cuts. Naruto was happy to find so many things from his clan's homeland, but he was severely disappointed that nothing seemed very ninja-oriented, aside from the few scrolls now tucked into his pouch alongside Kichijoten's journal. Still, he could at least find out more about his family from all the journals left behind in the library. When they finally made it back to the mask room, the sunlight streaming through the window and the gaps in the walls was beginning to have an orange cast to it. Sasuke and Sakura were finishing up the catalog of the masks with a surprising amount of focus on Sakura's part, considering the proximity of her crush. Okay, team, let's wrap it up for today, Kakashi announced. We'll start on the inventory of the outer rooms tomorrow, after team training. Sasuke nodded once and turned for the door without a word. Sakura hurriedly finished writing the description of the last mask, this one looking like a strange horned lizard, before rushing after the last Uchiha, intent on asking him to try out a new restaurant in town with her. Naruto was about to dart after her to offer his own company, but a hand on his shoulder stopped him short. Naruto, Kakashi's lone visible eye crinkled in a smile. Do you mind if I take a look at that journal you've been reading? There's something I want to check that has been bugging me all afternoon. Sure thing, sensei. Naruto fished the book out of his pouch and held it out. After a few minutes of thumbing through the pages, during which time Naruto's pent-up energy and impatience reached near fallout levels, Kakashi finally found the confirmation he was looking for. That didn't mean he couldn't take an extra few moments to see what new colors Naruto's face could turn with each and aha Kakashi let slip out. Just as Naruto looked ready to explode, Kakashi closed the book with a snap. Well, I remember where I heard the name Kichijoten of the No Masks before. He handed the book back to the blonde. 3, 2, 1. Well? Naruto erupted. What do you know about her, Kakashi-sensei? She was fairly well known in both the First and Second Wars, though most didn't know her name was Kichijoten. She was known in the book simply as the Shinobi of the Masks. Kakashi got a faraway look in his eye, reliving the times he had been told stories of the Shinobi of the Masks by his sensei's wife. For a while, many thought she was part of a special strike force of Uzushio Shinobi, similar to Konoha's ANBU. They always seemed to work as single members attached to other teams, and they each wore a different mask. Eventually, word got out that there was no task force, and that all the masked shinobi were one and the same. Kakashi chuckled, remembering the pride in Kushina's eyes as she told him. After that, her reputation as the shinobi of the masks grew almost as much as the Sannin, though they came later. Naruto looked down at the journal, starstruck at the idea of being related to such a legend. He silently renewed his vow to bring back the Uzumaki from the brink of extinction, and he added his resolution to live up to his clan's legacy. When he looked up, Kakashi saw the fire and blue eyes so familiar, he could not hold their gaze for long, lest he break his word to uphold the Sandame's law. Instead, he turned to the masks hanging on the wall, still visible in the evening glow. Kakashi cleared the catch from his throat. If I'm not mistaken, some of these masks may have belonged to Kichijoten. At Naruto's surprised look, he continued, why don't you bring a couple of these masks to the training ground tomorrow, and we can try to figure out how they worked. I'm sure something in that journal will give us some clues. With that, the silver-haired Jonin ruffled the blonde's hair and sauntered out the door, heading back to the village proper. As he reached the bottom of the steps, he called out once more, don't stay out too late. You know how your sensei feels about punctuality. Naruto scoffed and turned to retort, but his teacher was already gone. Facing the wall of masks once more, he tried to decide which ones he should take with him to try first. There were several with animal likenesses, including the horned lizard Sakura had finished her catalog with, as well as a wolf or fox, some kind of large cat, and a sea serpent. There were others that appeared to be in the image of different people, male and female, with distinctive markings on the cheeks and forehead that made them appear to change expression, depending on how Naruto looked at them. There were still others that had fearsome, demonic-looking faces, including one fashioned to look like the Shinigami himself, a small dagger clutched in its fanged mouth, with two curving horns sprouting from the top of the mask's head. Naruto shuddered at the expression of that mask, and moved back toward the animal masks. The golden glow of the late afternoon sun streamed through the doorway and windows, as well as the cracks and holes in the ceiling. Its gentle caress bathed the room with warmth and added an almost mystical feeling, as if the shrine existed in some fey world, whose border with the material blurred and twisted from the shrine's influence. The wind blew through the shrine, jostling the masks on their hangings. The movement, coupled with the steady glow of sunlight, made the masks look as if they were laughing and frolicking where they hung, joyous at the promised re-emergence of the clan who created them. He heard a small sound coming from the doorway in the foyer behind him. He pulled out a kunai, and crouched, turning toward the door. He darted to one side of the door, hiding behind the frame. His team had left, and the Hokage hadn't mentioned that anyone else would be sent to help. He took a deep breath, then spun around the door frame to face the intruder. Silhouetted by the afternoon sun, Hinata yelped and stumbled back out the doorway, nearly falling down the stairs. I'm sorry Naruto-san. I didn't mean to startle you, she stuttered, trembling and red-faced. Hinata? Naruto straightened, returning his kunai to his belt. What are you doing here? The Hyuga heiress straightened, but she found the floor in front of her far more comfortable to look at, only briefly glancing up at the orange-clad ninja. My team training, she swallowed, and tried again. Kurenai-sensei dismissed us. I remembered you telling us about your clan shrine, and I wanted to, she trailed off, looking up briefly. She hoped Naruto understood what she was trying to say, but his bewildered look showed her hope was in vain. She took a deep breath, clasping her hands firmly at her waist to still the trembling, and bowed. She breathed one more time, gathering her courage. I would like to offer to help you restore the Uzumaki shrine. She closed her eyes, still bowed at the waist. Hope and dread warred within her, as the silence seemed to stretch on. Did he not hear her? Maybe he didn't want her help. Should she have come earlier, when his team was still here? How much help could she even be, really? Surely he would prefer someone else, like Sakura. Hinata's knees began shaking, and the tremor from her hands spread to her shoulders, despite her tightly clutching them to her waist. Heat began to rise from her neck into her face, and she was beginning to feel dizzy. She was just about to bolt for the door when she heard Naruto respond in a voice smaller than she had ever heard him use. You want to help me? Hinata looked up, and once again pale lavender met surprised blue. She nearly lost herself in those blue depths, the mask beginning to crack. She nodded once, not trusting her voice. Why? Her heart fluttered at his expression, so filled with hopeful disbelief and confusion that she couldn't speak for a moment. She saw the cracks in the mask beginning to close, Naruto's guard returning, and she knew she had to speak now, or lose her chance. She straightened fully, meeting his eyes, praying he could see her sincerity. I want to help you because you deserve to know where you come from, she began. You always try so hard to get people to acknowledge you. You never give up even when you make mistakes. No matter how hard things may seem, you always try your best. When you fall, you get up again. And you keep trying. Now that you know you come from a clan, you have family, even if their village is gone. The Uzumaki are still alive because you. Hinata could feel her face heating up even more, but looking into Naruto's eyes gave her strength to push on, despite her trembling. When you said you'd bring the Uzumaki back, I believed you and I want to help by helping you restore your clan's shrine. There was more Hinata wanted to say, but her courage gave out, so she simply bowed again, letting her midnight blue hair fall forward to shadow her eyes as tears threatened to spill from them. Naruto was stunned once again by Hinata's words. He could hardly believe that anyone would so fervently believe in him. He'd always felt like a screw-up, and the constant reminders of his failures by nearly everyone in the village had hurt more than he liked to admit. He fought so hard for respect and recognition, only for it to be denied him at every turn. Yet here was someone, a girl from his class, offering it to him freely. True, she seemed a little weird and timid, but she came here on her own, just because she wanted to help him. Slowly, a small smile spread across Naruto's face. The smile widened, forcing his eyes closed with its intensity. Hinata straightened just as Naruto bounded forward, wrapping her in a tight hug, nearly lifting her from the ground. The young girl swooned, the edges of her vision going dark, but a whisper from Naruto, so at odds with the exuberance of his actions, grounded her. Thank you, Hinata. Naruto let her go and stepped back, uncharacteristically nervous. Hinata swayed slightly, but she exerted every ounce of will she had to prevent herself from fainting. A shy smile graced her face, and her heartbeat would have made a hummingbird jealous, but she succeeded in remaining conscious. So, do you want to look around first? Naruto asked. I don't think we can get too much more done tonight, but maybe you can help me look for more jutsu scrolls in the library? At Hinata's nod, Naruto turned to once again lead the way through the foyer and into the mask room. Before they crossed the threshold to the inner rooms, Naruto paused and moved toward the tapestry depicting his clan's home. Actually, we might as well start here. He gestured grandly at the image of his homeland. This is Yuzushio, the village hidden in the whirling tides. Hinata gasped in wonder, and Naruto felt a surge of pride in his ancestors' accomplishments. They had to rely more on their flashlights as the sun continued westward, granting the sunlight that spilled through the roof and doorway a more orange cast to its previous golden hue. After a moment, they continued deeper into the shrine. By the way, Hinata-chan, Naruto began, not noticing Hinata stumble at his words, how did you know where this place was? You left the mission hall before I told the Hokage about it. How did you know I'd be here? Oh, I didn't know where you would be, Hinata stuttered, trying to push down the flush brought on by Naruto's addition of Chan to her name, but I guess you might wanted to return to your clan's shrine to at least gather more of your family's belongings. When I saw your teammates leaving, I assumed your team was assigned to help you. I got here just as your sensei left. Huh, that's pretty smart. Naruto was surprised at Hinata's perceptiveness, but one thing still confused him, but that doesn't explain how you found this place. Hinata blushed at the compliment, and continued her explanation. I used my Byakugan, and I saw you and your teammates out here. Byaku, what now? Hinata stopped, and Naruto turned, perplexed. Byakugan. It's my family's bloodline, she explained, gesturing to her eyes. We can channel chakra to our eyes, which lets us see a great distance as well as chakra. She trailed off as Naruto's confusion seemed to grow. And maybe I could just show you? She closed her eyes and gathered her chakra, then after a short sequence of hand signs, she muttered, Byakugan, triggering the technique and sending a surge of chakra into her eyes, activating her bloodline. The chakra pathways surrounding her eyes bulged with the surge, and she opened her eyes, revealing the faint outline of her pupils were now visible in her lavender irises. Whoa! Naruto took half a step back, surprised at the activation. That's awesome. You can see chakra? Hinata nodded, and I can see approximately 50 meters in all directions. That's so cool. Hinata blushed at the praise, and turned her attention to the shrine to try to calm her emotions. She couldn't entirely avoid noticing Naruto's blazing chakra signature, testifying of his enormous stamina and vitality, but she was surprised at the several weaker chakra sources spread throughout the shrine. Naruto-kun? Do you know what the other chakra signatures in the shrine are? Other chakra? Do you mean there are more people here? Naruto immediately went on guard, searching for the unseen company. No, they are too small to be people, and they aren't moving. Hinata focused her vision on the nearest source, back at the entrance to the shrine. They look like S-seals. There's one there by the entrance. The pair moved back to the entrance, and with Hinata's guidance, they soon found a seal carved into post to one side. The intricate carving was remarkably well preserved, considering the condition of the rest of the shrine, but there were faint scorch marks along some of the main strokes. Naruto reached out to touch the seal, but a gentle touch from Hinata made him pause. And Naruto-kun, it could be dangerous. Hinata noticed her hand on his, and pulled back, embarrassed. We don't know what kind of seal it is, or what it does. Naruto gulped, curling his fingers back, but leaving his hand outstretched. Well, what's the worst it could be? An explosive seal, was her quiet reply. Maybe a way to prevent enemies from capturing the shrine. Naruto tensed, retracting his hand fully, and peered at the seal, its twisting lines now evoking a coiled adder in his imagination. He peered closer, shining his light at different angles. The longer he looked, the more calm he felt. He didn't get the feeling the seal was dangerous, at least, not in an explosive way. He didn't understand how his certainty was growing, but it was a similar feeling of weight, looking at this seal, as when he first found the shrine the day before. He felt again the faint almost whisper caress his mind as he stared ever deeper into the seal. Uzumaki. Hinata, Naruto breathed. Did you hear that? Naruto? I thought I heard something. Naruto shook himself. I don't think this is dangerous. How do you know? The slight quaver in Hinata's voice was unmistakable. I don't know, but looking at it just feels different, you know? Hinata considered the blonde next to her. Alright, Naruto-kun. I trust you. Naruto reached his finger out toward the seal, hesitating just above the surface, before pressing the center firmly. A moment passed, and the two genin realized they had both squeezed their eyes shut. They looked at each other sheepishly and chuckled. Naruto, you usually have to put chakra into a seal to activate it. The blonde blinked. Oh, ahaha, I knew that. I was just messing around to break the tension. Hinata giggled at his antics, watching with her Byakugan as he sent a small spike of chakra into the seal. Almost immediately, most of the other chakra sources flared to life, the light vanishing from her sight more quickly than it came. The result made her gasp in astonishment. She couldn't see outside the shrine. Hinata quickly deactivated her Byakugan, and saw everything appeared unchanged to her normal vision. Naruto still stood, touching the seal, looking bewildered. Nothing happened? Maybe I need to put more chakra into it? And no, Naruto, Hinata reactivated her clan's technique to confirm what she had seen. The seal worked, but I don't know what it did exactly. I think it put up a barrier. A barrier? Hinata nodded, her vision once again returning to normal. It looks the same, but when I try to use my Byakugan, I can't see anything outside of the shrine. Whoa, Naruto looked around the shrine again, with far more interest. Let's go outside and see if anything changed. Hinata followed the blonde down the stairs and into the clearing. They looked around, but nothing seemed out of place. The late afternoon had become early evening, the sun inching ever closer to the horizon, and a friendly breeze rustled the leaves in the trees surrounding. On a hunch, Hinata reactivated her eyes, and knew what had happened. Naruto, the barrier blocks my sight. I can't see the shrine now. She took a few steps forward, but found an invisible obstruction blocking her from getting any close to the shrine. I've found it! The barrier is right here! Naruto came forward. I can't see anything, are you sure? Hinata, excitement completely swallowing her shyness, clasped his hand and brought it up next to where hers was pressed against the barrier. Can you feel it? It won't let us get any closer to the shrine. Naruto hesitated, but he couldn't feel anything. He took another step forward, attempting to pull his companion with him, but something prevented her from following, and his hands slipped from her grasp. Naruto? You got through the barrier? I can't see you anymore. I didn't feel any barrier. Naruto looked even more confused. Hinata thought for a moment before inspiration struck. It might be coded to allow people with the right chakra signature through. You can get through because you are an Uzumaki, but I can't, because I don't have the right chakra. Seals can do that? Hinata shrugged. She admittedly didn't know much about seals beyond what her family used, which she did not like to think about, but the evidence seemed to suggest no other conclusion. Maybe could you go back inside and deactivate the barrier? How do I do that? Try putting your chakra into the seal again? Naruto nodded, forgetting that Hinata couldn't see him through the barrier while she still had her Byakugan activated. He turned and ascended the stairs, stepping through the doorway. As soon as his foot crossed the threshold, he heard an exclamation behind him. Oh! Naruto, the barrier is gone! Hinata came up next to him, her eye technique still active. The pair re-entered the shrine, and moved to the center of the foyer. Hinata gazed around for a few minutes, before turning back to Naruto. the chakra pathways to her eyes returning to normal as she released her technique. It looks like most of the chakra sources are connected to that seal, she pointed back to the door post. It's probably a network used for the barrier. Naruto nodded. What about the others? There are a few in the library that might be storage scrolls, and most of the masks have quite a few seals on them. There are also quite a few different seals and chakra sources in the basement. Naruto started. The basement? Hinata cocked her head in a way that made something inside Naruto jump, but before he could do more than notice the feeling, her response gave him something else to think about. There is a floor beneath this one with several rooms, and a large open space. Did you not know that? Excitement gleamed in Naruto's blue eyes, providing more answer than words, and Hinata was surprised to feel the same emotion welling up in her. The two genin felt the allure of adventure calling them deeper into the shrine as they searched for a way into the lower level. Hinata led the way toward where she had seen the stairs. The two entered the library, and Hinata pointed to the portrait of Uzumaki Ashina. The stairs are behind that picture. Naruto hurried over and started examining the frame, looking for a hidden clasp or switch. He soon found another seal, this one tiny, no larger than his fingertip. A small pulse of chakra resulted in an audible click, and the portrait swung forward, revealing a hidden staircase leading down into the darkness. The air was cool, but not musty, and there was no trace of dust or grime on the steps. Naruto turned back to Hinata, the thrill of discovery shining in his face matched only by her own. Naruto practically vibrated with excitement, and Hinata giggled into the back of her hand at his exuberance. Their elation was short-lived, however, as they both noticed the sun fully setting behind the trees, casting the surrounding forest in shadow. Oh no, Hinata moaned, I didn't realize that it was so late. She cast her eyes to the floor. I have to get home before my father sends someone looking for me. I'm sorry, Naruto. You'll have to go down without me. Naruto could see Hinata's disappointment, and his heart clenched within him. He looked down into the dark stairway, silently beckoning him with adventure and promise of uncovering more of his family's legacy. He looked back at the girl who had, in one day, done more to help him than anyone else had in his entire life. Hinata stood, staring at the floor, disappointed that she couldn't see this through to the end with Naruto, but not wanting to hold him back from discovering more about the family he so desperately wanted. She knew he couldn't wait to investigate the basement, but the sound of the hidden door closing felt like the crashing of prison bars to her heart. A hand reaching down to hers shocked her into looking up to meet those bright blue eyes she so admired. The genuine compassion in them made her breath catch in her throat. Hinata-chan, I never would have found this place without you, he began. I couldn't go down there and leave you to go home alone. That wouldn't be fair, you know? But this is your family, don't you want to see what they left behind? Of course I do. But you're part of this now, too. Don't you want to see what is down there? Why yes, but... Then we will find out together. Naruto pounded his fist into his hand. They've waited this long, they can wait one more night. Hinata was touched by Naruto's consideration. His words, that she was part of this too, etched themselves into her memory. She felt like she was finally being useful to someone, and that someone being Naruto made it all the better. The deepening darkness of the shrine hid her blush, but the warmth she felt went beyond her shyness. She felt she had worth for the first time since her mother had passed. She wasn't just a burden. She sniffled, tears beginning to trickle down her cheeks, and she bowed. Thank you, Naruto-kun. For more than you know. A breeze blew briskly across Training Ground 7, shaking the sleepy grass with cool vigor as it raced the coming dawn. It swept the dew from leaf and blade with impunity, confident in its sovereignty over the vegetation at such an early hour. It soon reached a patch of grass that had already been stripped of dew, and showed signs of hard wear. This area of training ground had been put to use by a young, orange-clad ninja, surprising the energetic wind, which normally shared these early hours with a pair dressed in green. The breeze could not be perturbed for long, and soon went in search of new adventures, leaving Naruto to shiver slightly in the cool morning air. Naruto had been too excited to begin learning the Uzumaki jutsu they'd found in the shrine the day before to wait for team training. At the first lightening of the sky, he rushed out of his apartment, barely pausing long enough to lock his door. He practically flew to the training ground, a pack holding a few items from the shrine that Kakashi had suggested he bring. When he'd arrived in the pre-dawn light, he gently placed the pack on top of one of the training stumps to protect it from the dew-drenched grass, and drew out the scroll containing the Uzumaki taijutsu style. After spreading it out on a nearby rock for reference, he began with a brief warm-up to loosen his limbs in preparation, then moved on to attempting to copy the forms illustrated in the scroll. His progress had been slow and frustrating. The damp grass sabotaged his footing and made the wrestle with the forms more taxing. Fortunately, he'd never adhered to the style taught in the academy, preferring an ad hoc, brawler method of fighting, so he didn't have to replace much existing muscle memory. Unfortunately, since he'd never learned a dedicated taijutsu style before, he was unsure how the forms were supposed to link together. After over an hour of struggling, and feeling next to no progress, he'd flopped down to the wet grass, aching limbs protesting loudly. This was the position the wind had found him in, and where he now lay. Building an entirely new style from essentially nothing, with only a scroll as his guide, was more frustrating than he'd anticipated. He would need a teacher to show him how to move his body to match the descriptions in the scroll if he ever hoped to master his clan's fighting style. With any luck, his sensei's friend would be able to fill that role. After a few more moments, Naruto pulled himself to his feet and retrieved the scroll from the rock, rolling it up as he returned it to his pack on the nearby training stump. Naruto fished out the remaining items he'd brought, 3 of Kichijoten's masks that he had picked out before leaving the shrine with Hinata. The first was fashioned to resemble a hawk, sharp features accentuated by fierce lines. The second mask was in the likeness of a bear that seemed to change from friendly to ferocious depending on how one looked at it. The last was the strange lizard he had seen Sakura enter into the catalogue. It was nearly expressionless, but had 3 long horns protruding from the face, one above each eye, and one on the nose, with a wide, gaping mouth. It was this last one that Naruto decided to try on first. He turned the mask over, looking for a strap or some other way to secure it to his face, but found nothing. Confused, he tried holding it on, but did not notice any change, other than a restriction of his vision. He lowered the mask once more and gave it a closer inspection, turning it over in his hands as he tried to figure out how it worked. After a few moments, he set the lizard mask aside and reached for the hawk. The same procedure yielded similarly disappointing results. "Ah, come on!" Naruto groaned in frustration. "How are these things supposed to work?" He plopped back down to the grass, leaning against the stump. He held the lizard mask up to the sky, watching the early morning rays play along the surface, the light and shadow animating the face so that it appeared to be alternately grinning and frowning down at him. It seemed he'd have to wait for Kakashi to help him figure these things out after all. Thinking of his one-eyed sensei reminded Naruto that the Jonin had mentioned the journal might hold some clues about how Kichijoten used her masks. He reached back to his equipment pouch to retrieve the book that had begun this whole journey. Thumbing through the pages, he came again to the image that had first caught his eye, that of Kichijoten expelling a great ball of flame at her enemies. Turning back a page, Naruto began to scan the words. Finding the camp had been the easy part. Yoshiro had been able to sense the gathered chakra signatures from quite a distance away. His mastery of the mind's eye of the Kagura never ceases to amaze me. I know he hopes his little Mariko can follow in his footsteps, but the girl seems to have scant interest in the life of a shinobi. In any case, once Yoshiro had led us to the camp, Aina and I discussed how best to engage the target. Ideally, we wanted to avoid most of the underlings and lure Kajimura to us, but we all knew he was far too paranoid to stray far from the perceived safety of his little army. We thought to wait until an hour or two before dawn, when the sentries would be at their least attentive, and use Aina's earth release to infiltrate the perimeter, but Yoshiro informed us about several other signatures clustered together near the center of the camp. These signatures belonged to a group of young captives, which I confirmed with Washikun. Aime's face darkened at the report. She knew well Kajimura's reputation. It seemed like I would get to try my new mask out earlier than I'd thought. I was nervous about trying it so soon after finishing the seals. I hadn't even had a chance to test it yet, and it was the first time I had made a mask based on a being as potent as Kuzunoha. Still, I knew I would need all of her power I could get, and likely several of my lesser masks as well. Naruto paused in his reading. Kichijoten mentioned she'd had to finish the seals before she could use the mask. He had no idea what she had done, but if it involved Fuinjutsu, then maybe it worked like the seals he and Hinata had found in the shrine. Naruto picked up the lizard mask once more, looking closely to locate any hint of a seal. However, even with the strengthening sunlight, he could find no trace. The lacquered paint was smooth and hard across the surface, and the inside was similarly unblemished. Something tickled at the back of his mind, but he couldn't quite grasp it. The feeling difficult to describe. It was like gossamer moonlight on his skin, leaving the echo of the sun's warmth impressed on his mind, without any perceptible heat of its own. Though he could see no indication, the longer he looked, the more certain he became that the mask indeed housed a sleeping power, just beneath the surface. Hesitantly, he moved the mask back into place, holding it against his skin. The smooth interior was cool, though it warmed quickly from his own body temperature. Naruto slowly gathered the smallest spark of chakra he could into his palm, before pushing it timidly into the mask. Naruto knew immediately that it had worked. His vision was the first thing he noticed. It was disorienting enough that his brain refused to process what had happened. The world spun as he tried to make sense of what he was seeing. Even sitting, he lurched forward, closing his eyes against the unfamiliar assault. The grass beneath him, and now clutched tightly in his fists, provided something he could anchor himself to as he struggled with the new sensation. With his eyes closed, he could begin to sort out the other feelings activating the mask had brought. The mask itself adhered to his face like a second skin. The fit was comfortable and natural enough that he could hardly notice it was there. He was almost certain that, were he to move the muscles of his face, the mask would reflect even the smallest twitch. He eventually sorted out that some of what he was experiencing was an extreme enhancement of his sense of touch. The grass was cool and wet beneath his fingers. He could feel the tiny edges on each blade, the slight temperature change from his touch. He could tell when the breeze picked up before it reached his face because he could feel the grass begin to move to the subtlest disturbance in the air. He knew without looking there was a ladybug crawling through the grass to the left of his hand, each footfall landing like a galloping horse. Slowly, tentatively, Naruto tried reopening his eyes. He stopped at the barest slit, as the sensation threatened to overwhelm him again. After a moment, he realized he could see all around him all at once. He could see the training stump behind his back as well as the ground in front of him, though he noticed the expanded view was greater horizontally than vertically. Is this how Hinata sees things? No wonder she looks about ready to faint all the time. Naruto had to admit, though, as he got more used to it, being able to see nearly all around him at once would be a terrific boon to a ninja. It would definitely take some patience and practice becoming accustomed to it, though. He couldn't afford to spend several minutes reorienting himself to his new worldview if he wanted to use the mask in a fight. Naruto slowly got to his feet, finally managing to open his eyes fully, though it cost him a couple stumbles before he succeeded in righting himself and remember which way was front. He studied the area around him, an odd experience when his head didn't move, and tried to understand his expanded field of view. The slightest movement seemed to catch his eye, and his enhanced sense of touch combined to give him a nearly complete image of everything within the training ground. After a few minutes of practicing with his new senses, he felt a slow, rhythmic thumping from the ground beneath him. He almost instantly recognized it as footsteps, though he didn't understand how he knew this. As he waited for the owner to appear, he unknowingly settled into absolute stillness. In a few moments, Sasuke walked onto the field, revealed to be the source of the footsteps. Naruto almost shouted an insult to the Uchiha, but his normal competitiveness seemed to be swallowed up by calm patience, and he was content to let his teammate make the first greeting. Sasuke made no such address, which didn't surprise Naruto, but nor did he seem to notice the bright orange-clad ninja, which did surprise him. Sasuke scanned the field as he approached the training stumps, obviously seeing Naruto's pack and the evidence of his early arrival, but his eyes seemed to sweep right over the blonde. A puzzled look crossed Sasuke's face, mirrored by one of Naruto's own. Before either genin had time to think too much on this, they were joined by their pink-haired teammate. Sakura stepped into the training ground, still rubbing sleep from her eyes. As soon as she saw Sasuke, she brightened considerably and let out a friendly call. Sasuke-kun. Good morning. It looks like we're the first ones here, again. Sasuke gave his usual taciturn grunt in reply, though it seemed more out of habit due to his distraction. Naruto's been here already. At the Kunoichi's look of confusion, Sasuke merely pointed at the pack on top of one of the training posts. The two approached the stump, passing within a few feet of where Naruto stood. Maybe he went back to the village for breakfast? Sasuke again only grunted in reply. Something seemed off, but he couldn't place his finger on what. His instincts warned him to stay on guard, however, especially after what had happened the day of the team assignments. He refused to let Naruto get the drop on him again. Sakura could feel her teammates' tension, and nervously scanned the field for signs of trouble. Surely nothing serious could have happened to Naruto, right? They were still within the village boundaries, so it was safe. Unless enemy ninja had infiltrated the village. But why would they attack Naruto? Maybe he had seen them while he was training, so they had no choice but to silence him. She was slowly working herself into a panic. Sure, Naruto was annoying, and she wished he would leave her alone, but she didn't want anything bad to happen to him. He was still her teammate, after all. Naruto stood, shaking with repressed laughter. Somehow, he remained undetected by his teammates, though he was close enough to touch them. His prankster mind was alight with the possibilities this discovery enabled. Finally, he could take it no longer, and collapsed to the grass, rolling with laughter. His mirth doubled when his teammates jumped at the sudden sound, their souls briefly leaving their bodies. The fear was short-lived, replaced by irritated annoyance on the part of the Uchiha, and shame-fueled rage on the part of the Haruno. Now are you two? Sakura's fists clenched tighter as she approached the wheezing Uzumaki, murder in her eyes. Sensing his impending demise, Naruto tried to rein in his laughter, with little success, and now Sakura, hee, I didn't do anything. You both walked right past me. Through tear-blurred vision, Naruto saw Sakura pause. With a final gasp for his starving lungs, he pushed himself to his feet, ribs aching. He moved the mask to the right side of his head where it remained as if held on by a strap. His vision returned to normal as he wiped the tears from his eyes. The motion drew his teammates' attention to his new accessory. Isn't that one of those masks from the shrine? Sakura questioned, her curiosity overcoming her anger. Yeah, pretty cool, huh? It lets me see all around, even behind me, and it let me know when you guys were coming. Sasuke had a calculating look in his eye. Is that how you were able to hide from us? Naruto shrugged. I think so. I'm not actually sure how that happened. I was just standing here and you two wailed right past me. Show me. Naruto preened under the attention he was receiving, and wanted to push it as far as he could. So, jerk, he gloated, finally ready to admit how awesome I am? The Uchiha heir glared, but it was Sakura who responded to the blonde's taunt. Naruto, stop being rude to Sasuke-kun. Naruto was hurt that Sakura once again took their dark-haired teammate's side, but hid the pain behind his normal mask of bravado. Before he could respond, however, the voice of their sensei broke in. I'd like to see the technique too, Naruto. Kakashi placed a hand on the blonde's head, if you don't mind. Kakashi-sensei. The orange-clad ninja spun, pointing an accusatory finger. You're late. The Jonin waved his hand in front of his face. Ma, only a little. I wanted to tell you what my friend said about your taijutsu training. The promise of help learning his family's taijutsu immediately erased all of Kakashi's transgressions in Naruto's book, and he stared at his teacher with wide eyes. What did he say? What did he say? Calm down, Naruto. Kakashi held up his hands again to settle the vibrating blonde. He said he would be happy to help if you let him see the scroll you found. Yada! Naruto's joyful jump was cut short by his sensei's next words. But I will only allow you to meet with him under 3 conditions. He held up his fingers to illustrate. First, 1 digit went down. You will meet with him at Training Ground 9 at 0400 every day you are in the village until he deems you proficient enough to train on your own, no complaints. Naruto's excitement waned at the early hour, but he quickly nodded, bolstering his determination. 2. Another finger retreated. You will abide by any demands he may place on you, with the exception of altering your appearance in any way. Naruto was puzzled at the strange caveat, and the first niggling of worry wormed its way into his expression. And 3. Kakashi's eye and tone turned deadly serious. If you ever utter the word youth while undergoing this training, I will personally throw you off the Hokage mountain. Naruto almost laughed at the final condition, but the impulse was murdered by his sensei's look and flash of killing intent. With wide eyes and pale face, he nodded dumbly. The dark feeling dissipated instantly, as Kakashi smiled down at him and ruffled his hair. Good, he responded in his normal lazy, but light-hearted tone. Now, let's see that technique you used to hide from your teammates. A quick salute, and Naruto pulled the mask back down over his face, returning his senses to their augmented state. This lets me see all the way around, even behind me. Interesting, Kakashi mused. Sasuke, Sakura, please go stand over there. He indicated a place behind Naruto, then looked back to the blonde. Without turning around, tell me what hand sign they are each making. Naruto did as instructed, successfully identifying the hand signs his teammates made, even when his sensei told them to begin cycling through them. After a couple of minutes of moving them around the training field to gauge the range and extent of Naruto's vision, Kakashi brought them back together near the stumps. Alright, time to see your hiding technique, Naruto. The genin chuckled nervously, still unsure how he had done that in the first place. He tried channeling his chakra again, like Hinata had taught him, but he couldn't tell if it had worked. The expectant looks from the rest of his team showed him it had not. Thinking back to before Sasuke had arrived, Naruto attempted to pinpoint what had triggered the technique. He remembered an enveloping feeling of calm and patience, so he tried to slow his breathing. He imagined he was being chased by the academy instructors as on the day he painted the Hokage monument, and focused on when he had hidden behind his camouflage cloth. He stilled himself, even tried to make his breathing shallow and smooth so as not to betray his location. He could reach that state of stillness for only a moment, which had been enough to allow his pursuers to pass him by, but a shocked gasp from Sakura caught his attention, and broke his tenuous focus. To his teammates, Naruto had briefly faded from view, blending into the background so perfectly as to render himself practically invisible. Sakura's sudden intake of breath had caused Naruto to snap back into visibility. The kunoichi looked to her fellow genin and her sensei to confirm that they had seen it as well, and saw Kakashi adjusting his forehead protector over the hidden half of his face. The twinkle in his eye confirmed that he had seen Naruto vanish too. Naruto moved the mask back to the side of his head. Did it work? Kakashi nodded, but it was only for a moment. It seems like you need to work on your concentration. He turned to his other two students. Any guesses on how it works? All three genin stood, thoughtful, for a few moments, before Sakura finally spoke up. I didn't see any hand signs, she began, so it has to be a technique stored in the mask itself. Since it was made by the Uzumaki, and you said they were known for their sealing techniques, it is probably from a seal somewhere on the mask, Sasuke added. He, too, was getting caught up in the mystery of the jutsu. Naruto nodded. Kichijoten said something about seals in her journal, but I didn't see any on the masks. Kakashi tapped his chin with one long finger. It's possible the seals are hidden on the front of the mask. They could have been carved or burned into the wood, then inked, and covered with the lacquer to protect and conceal them, though I have no idea how that could have been accomplished without the seals becoming distorted, or what seals were used. He was grateful to Kushina for sharing what little she knew of Kichijoten's methods, but he couldn't explain much to his genin at this time. Besides, it was good for them to think he was coming up with this all on his own. Naruto's mind began to spin with the possibilities as he absently touched his pouch where the journal lay. He was pulled from his musings when he realizes his sensei was still speaking. I think it's about time you get some practice using that mask in a combat simulation. Sasuke, Sakura, I want you two to spar with Naruto while he wears the mask. Come at him both at once, from as many different angles as you can. Naruto, I want you to practice keeping track of multiple targets in your expanded vision and try to get that fading technique working more reliably. If you can avoid capture by your teammates for a reasonable amount of time, we'll head over to the shrine to continue our mission. Naruto felt a cold chill crawl up his spine, as if someone had walked over his grave. He turned slowly to see his teammates, each with a ghoulish smile on their faces. Sakura cracked her knuckles menacingly. The promise of pain for his earlier prank hung unspoken in the air. Sweat began to pour from Naruto's brow. Oh, and Naruto, Kakashi drove one final nail in the last Uzumaki's coffin, no shadow clones. The terrified screams quickly fading into the distance were drowned out by the shouts of rage following. Kakashi chuckled to himself, pulling out his favorite orange book. Kushina, you would be proud of how Naruto is taking to the Uzumaki legacy. He gazed up at the Hokage mountain in the distance, thinking of one face particularly. He may even surpass you one day, sensei. Naruto had eventually gotten the hang of utilizing his expanded vision to track his teammates' movements, which was incredibly useful, but the most he had managed with the other technique was a brief fade into invisibility that lasted a few moments. Still, necessity had driven him to the utmost reaches of his creativity, and timing with his new ability. Sasuke or Sakura had cried foul on him for using shadow clones more than once when they had him cornered, only for him to fade out of existence at the last moment. After an indeterminable time, all three genin had flopped to the grass, scuffed and exhausted. True to his word, Kakashi had given them an early lunch before ending training for the morning. After a quick detour to the mission supply depot, where Team 7 picked up some work lights and a generator to use while they continued the inventory, they made their way back to the Uzumaki shrine. Once they had arrived and set up the lights, Kakashi directed the genin to the library to begin cataloging the records there. Upon seeing the portrait of Uzumaki Ashina, Naruto was reminded of the discovery he and Hinata had made the night before. A sly grin crept onto his face as his prankster mind once again whirred to life. If he had been able to get the drop on Uchiha Sasuke of all people with just one of Kichijoten's masks, imagine what he could do with an entire basement full of Uzumaki's secret techniques. The three genin began cataloging the books and scrolls on the shelves around the room. Most were journals or biographies of the Uzumaki clan, though there were a few about other Yuzashio ninja that appeared to be from families allied with the Uzumaki but not large enough to be full clans. There was also a collection of mission reports dating from before the First Great Shinobi World War up through the Second War. Naruto made a mental note to show those to Iruka-sensei, since he knew the scarred Chunin had a penchant for history. 2 books among the shelves made Naruto's short list to read next. The first was found by Sakura, The Ancient Art of Fuinjutsu, a primer by Uzumaki Ashina. Naruto recalled the Hokage's praise for Ashina's mastery of sealing, and set the book aside to take home at the end of the day. The second was a thick leather-bound volume without a title, but it contained a genealogy of the Uzumaki clan and allied families in Yuzashio. Naruto had let out an exclamation upon finding the record, and immediately began leafing through it. Hey guys, come look at what I just found. Sakura peered over the blonde's shoulder. It looks like a pedigree chart, she remarked. Naruto blinked. A pedi what now? It's like a family tree, Kakashi explained. It shows how members of the Uzumaki clan are related to one another. The silver-haired Jonin took a closer look at the text, this one also seems to show some of the other families that lived in Uzushio, and were allied with the Uzumaki. Naruto's eyes traced the names of his ancestors and their friends. He saw Ashina with his birth and death dates listed on a page with several others, perhaps his parents and children. As he kept looking, the names seemed to whisper greetings to their distant descendant. Uzumaki Kona, Uzumaki Fujin, Uzumaki Saido, Yuki Hajimura, Kataga Takashi, Uzumaki Okamune, and countless others. I wonder if my parents' names are in here? The whisper from the last Uzumaki contained more longing and hope than his teammates thought possible. After a moment, the genin got back to work sorting through the remaining books. Their time was spent mostly in silence, each contemplating the brief glimpse into Naruto's emotions he normally kept well hidden. For the genin, this was the first time they saw something in Naruto other than the brash knucklehead from the academy, and they wondered what else they didn't know about him. Their Jonin sensei once again questioned if the law was doing more harm than good, and he cursed his inability to make any meaningful change. The three genin worked quickly for the remainder of the afternoon, and Kakashi even put his orange book away to lend a hand. By the time they were finished for the day, they had gone through the library and started cataloging the contents of the storage rooms. All right, team, Kakashi gathered them at the entrance to the shrine. We've made good time, and tomorrow is our last day to complete the mission. Go home and get some rest, and report directly here in the morning, except for you, Naruto. You still have to meet your new taijutsu instructor at Training Ground 9 at 0400. Naruto winced once more at the early hour, but nodded in agreement. He was willing to do whatever was necessary to learn his clan fighting techniques. I am going to stop by the mission office to give Hokage-sama an update on our progress, Kakashi continued. He pulled out his book as he turned to leave, waving over his shoulder as he went, "You're all dismissed." Ja-ni. Sasuke immediately started in the direction of the Uchiha compound, Sakura prancing at his heels like a puppy. Hey, Sasuke-kun. Since we are finished for the day, would you like to go to dinner with me before heading home? The last Uchiha didn't even acknowledge the Pinked's offer, and soon disappeared into the trees, leaving Sakura standing dejectedly in the clearing. Her shoulders slumped, but then tensed as she waited for the inevitable counteroffer from her annoying blonde teammate. When the moment passed, and no such invitation was extended, she looked around, confused. Naruto was sitting on the steps to the shrine, the Uzumaki genealogy book open on his lap as he pored over it like a drowning man grasping for a lifeline. She supposed he was too distracted by the thought of finding out who his parents were to take advantage of Sasuke's rejection of her, for which she was glad. As she headed off towards the village proper and her own home, she felt a twang of disappointment that seemed unrelated to her failed attempt to go on a date with Sasuke. She quickly shook the thought from her head, not daring to examine it too closely, and focused on her next attempt to woo the dark-haired prodigy. For his part, Naruto had decided to look through his clan's history to see if he could find any clues pointing to his parents' identities while he waited for Hinata to arrive. He didn't know where to begin, however, and so simply opened to a random page near the middle of the book, half hoping he'd have an instinctual recognition of his parents' names. After a few fruitless minutes, he found a name he did recognize. Uzumaki Kichijoden had been born some 70 years ago to Kanoru and Aomi. She had two brothers, Tatika was 3 years older, and Akimitsu was 10 years younger. She had no children herself, but she did have a small collection of nephews and one niece through her brothers. The record stopped approximately 47 years after Kichijoden's birth. In fact, most of the entries ended with a presumed death date of about 23 years ago. That must have been when Uzushio was destroyed, he thought, somberly. As he saw more and more of his ancestors' lives cut short by that fateful date, he felt an overwhelming sadness begin to bubble up inside himself. He was surprised by the sudden pain of loss over something he hadn't known existed until 2 days prior. His clan had been gone before he'd been born, but the ache of might have been was made more poignant with each name he read. Naruto was pulled from his morose thoughts by a sound coming from the trees. The warm afternoon sun shone in his eyes, but through the brightness he saw Hinata step into the clearing, bearing a cloth-wrapped bundle. She must have seen something in his gaze, for she hesitated, then quickened her pace towards him. Naruto-kun, are you all right? Concern etched across her face. Confused, the blonde suddenly noticed an itchiness in his eyes, and rubbed his hand across his face. It came away damp. Why yeah, Hinata-chan, his response sounding thicker than he'd anticipated. He quickly cleared his throat, and scrunched his face up into a smile. Couldn't be better. For some reason, she looked even more pained at his answer, but she remained silent. After an awkward moment, Naruto gestured to her bundle. What do you have there? Hinata started, seeming to just remember she had something in her hands. Oh, I brought some food. She unwrapped the cloth and spread it on the top step of the shrine before placing the 2 bentos it had concealed on top of it. I didn't know if you'd eaten yet, and thought you might be hungry. Naruto opened the bento nearest to him. Inside was a grilled fish, onigiri, carrots and edamame, miniature tomatoes, and a small bowl of berries and melon balls. His mouth began to water even before the scent hit his nose, and his stomach growled in approval. Oh wow, Hinata-chan, this looks great. The smile he favored her with showed his genuine excitement. The tension in her shoulders seemed to lessen, and she sat down on the steps, a small smile of her own gracing her lips. The two genin ate quickly, eager to begin the exploration of the hidden basement beneath the shrine. When the meal was finished, Naruto bounded up from his seat, his exuberance restored. Hinata packed up the bentos, rewrapping them and setting them aside before rising more gracefully to her own feet. Naruto led the way back to the library, though Hinata kept at his heels. A quick pulse of chakra, and Ashina's portrait once again swung aside, revealing the secret staircase. Naruto turned to meet Hinata's gaze, finding his own excitement reflected in her pearlescent eyes. A shared nod, and the two descended into the last hold of the Uzumaki clan. When they left the reach of the work lights above, the pair pulled out their flashlights, illuminating the final steps and a short passage ending in a door emblazoned with the Uzumaki crest. As Naruto reached forward to open the portal, he once again felt the weight he had come to associate with the shrine settle over him. Uzumaki. He hesitated, glancing back to Hinata. The girl showed no signs of having heard the whisper, though her cheeks flushed red. She returned his look, puzzled. Naruto-kun? The boy shook himself. It's nothing, Hinata-chan, just nervous I guess. Hinata smiled gently, and in a moment of boldness that surprised her, she stepped forward, placing her hand above Naruto's. Blushing furiously, she nodded once more, whenever you are ready I'm here. Naruto grinned, anticipation again surging to the fore, and returned her nod. Together they pushed forward, opening the door and stepping through. Their flashlights illuminated a large room with a surprisingly high ceiling. The floor was made from smooth, close-fit stone, and the walls near the door were paneled with a fine, dark wood. Lanterns were ensconced at regular intervals on the walls. As they ventured deeper into the room, they began lighting the lamps along the way. The glow soon revealed colorful murals replacing the paneling, and several doors marked passages to side chambers. The center of the room was dominated by a large circle inlaid with some kind of metal inscribed with seals along the circumference. The ceiling held a beautiful mosaic depicting the land of whirlpools encircled by a great dragon whose coils churned the water into the namesake vortices that protected the island. Cranes flew above the steep mountains that surrounded a verdant valley, split by a wide river. On the bank, a pair of Kirin bent to drink from the laughing water while a third seemed to gaze down toward the chamber floor. The flickering lantern light gave life to the image, and the watchful Kirin appeared to look curiously at the awestruck genin. Hinata had never seen anything so grand, even in the Hyuga estate. To think that something that had been so lovingly and painstakingly crafted was hidden underground was almost heartbreaking. Wonder filled her mind at the thought that she was perhaps the first non-Uzumaki to see such a treasure. Naruto-kun, this is amazing. Hinata's voice escaped as barely a whisper, her eyes never leaving the stunning scene above her. Yeah, Naruto's voice held more reverence than she had ever heard in him before, and she was nearly overwhelmed that she was allowed to be a part of this discovery. Eventually, the two pulled themselves away from admiring the ceiling, and moved towards one of the doors at the side of the chamber. The spell of the mosaic seemed to fade as the thrill of adventure once again urged them onward. The door revealed another library, though this one was larger than the one above. Racks lined the walls, filled with scrolls of all sizes, from the small field scrolls used by shinobi on mission to ones larger and thicker than the scroll of sealing that had played such an important part of Naruto's graduation. A quick perusal showed them to contain techniques from every branch of the ninja arts, from ninjutsu and genjutsu, to taijutsu and weapon jutsu, though by far the largest portion of the collection was devoted to fuinjutsu. The next room contained displays of weapons and armor, mostly swords, but also a few polearms, unusual for a ninja clan. In the center of the chamber stood a suit of old-style armor on a stand, two curved sword hilts visible above the shoulders. This looks like the same set Shinigigi is wearing in the picture upstairs, Naruto noted. Hinata nodded her agreement, though she was stunned that all of this could have been hidden underneath the Uzumaki shrine for who knows how long, with no one in the village any wiser. The wealth of techniques in the scrolls alone would be irresistible to almost any ninja. The presence of the concealing barrier made more sense now that she could see what it was truly protecting. The final rooms in the basement were less exciting, holding what looked to be a workbench or study in one, and training equipment and supplies in the other. The two genin returned to the central chamber, dazed by the magnitude of their discovery. Hinata's worry was growing as she turned to Naruto, who kept glancing back to the scroll room. And Naruto-kun, she began, I think it would be best to activate the B barrier seals and keep them active as much as possible. Huh? Why? Hinata knew only too well the lengths some would go to gain power, as an old memory of a terrifying night played in the back of her mind, as some people might try to steal your clan secrets if they knew they were here. Now that you've found the shrine, someone may get curious about what may be left. Naruto's face darkened as he remembered the Chunin from the mission office. He knew it would be foolish to think that no one in the village would steal from him if they found out what the shrine contained. He looked to the blue-haired girl who had helped him so much more than he ever expected, and discovered it was easy to place his trust in her. Hinata-chan, Naruto's seriousness surprised the girl, though she gave him her full attention. Can you help me keep this place a secret, as long as possible? Fear threatened to overwhelm the young Hyuga heiress. She knew how important clan secrets were, being from one of the most prominent clans in the village, herself, but she was terrified that she would fall short of his expectations. Could she really keep all this a secret? She looked into Naruto's eyes, and saw the complete trust he had in her. Those blue eyes looked into her own lavender ones, and she could detect no hint of hesitation. That he would be so willing to entrust his clan's legacy to her was as humbling as it was frightening, but it was also encouraging. When he looked at her that way, she felt like she could accomplish anything. Her fears soon faded, and determination filled her own eyes as she met his gaze. She would not let Naruto down. With no further hesitation, she nodded. Once again, Naruto found himself up before the sun heading towards the training grounds. The stillness of the pre-dawn air and the quiet tranquility of the sleeping village were a sharp counterpoint to the blonde ninja's excitement to begin learning his clan's taijutsu style. He soon left the village proper, entering the forest which surrounded the various training grounds and provided privacy both for the shinobi honing their skills and the civilians who preferred that their homes and businesses not be exposed to wayward jutsu. The leaves rustled a sleepy greeting to the Uzumaki as he passed beneath their boughs, his thoughts lingering on the discoveries from the previous night. The jutsu library had been impressive. Most of the scrolls bore the stylized white spiral of the Uzumaki crest, but a few were either unmarked or had emblems that were unfamiliar to Naruto. Even Hinata with her clan upbringing could not identify them. The realization that more than just his clan had been destroyed when the village hidden in the whirling tides fell was sobering. Naruto resolved that night to do everything possible to discover who the lost clans of Uzushio were so their names would not be forgotten. He hoped the genealogy book would hold the information he needed, or at least some clues to the identities of the other clans. There were names from outside the Uzumaki clan, but Naruto hadn't noticed if there was anything to distinguish whether they came from clans or smaller families. The next discovery proved enough to bring the two genin out of their depressing mood. Hinata had discovered a large scroll in a jade tube, capped in gold and protected against unauthorized access by a seal with the white spiral at the center. Naruto applied a small bit of chakra, and the seal opened with a flash of light. The scroll inside contained the hijitsu of the Uzumaki clan. More than the generic ninja skills, Hinata had explained, hijitsu, also called Haiden, were secret techniques specific to a group or individual, in this case the Uzumaki, and could only be performed by one who had the special chakra unique to the clan. While not quite equivalent to a bloodline limit, they were the next closest thing, much like the mental skills of the Yamanaka clan or the shadow jutsu of the Nara. Kichijoden's method in creating her infamous masks could also be considered a hijitsu, albeit a lesser one than the clan's skills. The scroll described the Uzumaki as having 3 distinct Haiden, which all stemmed from their uniquely potent chakra. The first was called Mind's Eye of the Kagura, and was a chakra-sensing jutsu of unparalleled ability. It relied on the user's yin release to extend their senses to several dozen kilometers. The user could track distinct targets based purely on chakra signature, and perceive fluctuations in chakra that would indicate when a genjutsu was active on the person. The second ability was also based in yin release, though it began to blend in the yang release. It was known as the adamantine chains and came in 2 varieties, the attacking chains and the sealing chains. The attacking chains were capable of immense power, able to pierce any known substance, and lift tremendous weight with ease. The sealing chains could restrict a target's movement as well as chakra flow, and by using 2 or more chains, the Uzumaki could erect an impenetrable barrier. The third Haiden of the Uzumaki was much more closely guarded, to the point where it wasn't even named in order to prevent others from discovering and exploiting it. It was derived from the chakra transfer technique, and took advantage of the Uzumaki's potent life force and yang release. If someone bit an Uzumaki, they could transfer the Uzumaki's chakra and heal even life-threatening injuries. The drawback to this Haiden was it drained the Uzumaki's chakra reserves dramatically, and could be lethal if used too liberally. Naruto was pulled from his thoughts on his clan hijitsu by the sound of sparring coming from the clearing ahead. As he passed through the trees, he saw a jonin wearing a green one-piece training suit with orange leg warmers and a Konoha flak vest sparring against a clone that had been transformed to be about genin height, presumably in preparation for Naruto's arrival. The transformation jutsu on the clone appeared to be mainly a stature change, since it still looked identical to the Jonin, sans the flak vest. Both had black hair cut in a bowl style below their ears and slicked down until it looked more like a helmet than follicles. The most striking feature, however, was the set of the bushiest eyebrows Naruto had ever seen. As the blonde stepped closer, the Jonin lashed out with a blindingly fast punch, catching the clone in the chest. Instead of dispelling as Naruto expected, the clone flew back several feet and came to rest in the grass, narrowly avoiding being knocked into the pond at the edge of the field. Your flames of youth burn brightly, Lee-kun, the Jonin boomed, but you must continue to fan them to new heights if you want to best your eternal rival. Naruto's jaw dropped as the clone was revealed to be another genin. Lee kipped to his feet, clenching his fist in front of his face until it quivered. Now that the sparring had stopped, Naruto could see the differences between the two ninja. The genin, Lee, had almost unnaturally round eyes, and a softer face than the older ninja, though he sported the same thick eyebrows as his sensei. He had bandages wrapped around his hands and forearms, and Naruto noticed they covered knuckles thick with bruises and lacerations, testament to long hours practicing taijutsu strikes. Yash, then I will train even harder, Guy-sensei, Lee shouted back. I will start by doing 500 punches with each hand. And if I cannot do that, I will do 1,000 kicks. And if I cannot do that, I will run around the village 50 times with a boulder on each of my legs and arms. The Jonin, Guy, seemed unperturbed by the outlandish claims his student was making, instead responding with an outstretched thumbs up. When he smiled, the sun caught his perfectly white teeth and Naruto swore he heard a ping. Then go, my beloved student. Show the world what a splendid ninja you are, for this is the springtime of youth, and your passionate flames will never be quenched. While you train, I will begin fanning the flames of youth in our guest, and perhaps one day his fires may match your own. With tears streaming comically down his face, Lee sped off to the training stumps at the other end of the field to begin his punches, proclaiming youth to the heavens with every strike. Naruto suddenly understood his sensei's final warning as he stared in stunned silence at the distant genin. He could feel the cold sweat collect at the back of his neck as he turned to face the eccentric Jonin. What have I gotten myself into now? Guy looked down at the orange-clad ninja. You must be Uzumaki Naruto-san. His forceful voice made Naruto jump. My eternal rival, Kakashi, asked me to help you learn an ancient taijutsu style from your clan. My name is Might Guy, the sublime blue beast of prey, and Konoha's most devoted student of the art of taijutsu. It took Naruto a minute for his brain to agree to process anything other than eyebrows, but eventually he managed a weak reply. Yeah, Kakashi-sensei said you might be able to help me. Naruto reached into his pack and withdrew the taijutsu scroll. He hesitated a moment, remembering Hinata's words from yesterday, but with a slight nod, offered it to his temporary instructor. Guy reverently accepted the scroll, seeing the look that passed over the blonde's face. Fear not, Naruto-san, I will guard the knowledge this scroll contains with my very life. And I swear on the flames of youth that none shall discover your clan secrets from me, he finished with the same thumbs-up pose he had given his student. The self-proclaimed blue beast opened the scroll and began to examine the kata descriptions. His confident smile never wavered, and he soon looked back to Naruto, excitement shining in his eyes. I have never seen this style before in my life. Naruto's face fell. So you can't help me? On the contrary. This scroll contains everything we need to learn the lost style of the Uzumaki clan, together. Guy's exuberance was infectious, and Naruto soon found himself grinning just as broadly as his new sensei. Yada! Naruto leapt into the air, fist clenched in victory. When do we start, Bushiya-brows-sensei? Guy seemed unperturbed by the blonde ninja's nickname for him, and instead turned to his other student, still striking the distant training posts. Lee. I am in need of your assistance. The smaller green beast immediately bolted to his teacher and role model, stopping suddenly in a straight-back salute. Yes, Guy-sensei. I will do whatever you require. Lee-kun, this is Uzumaki Naruto. Guy gestured to the blonde. We will be helping him learn the taijutsu style of his clan. He then turned to Naruto to complete the introduction. Naruto-kun, this is Rock Lee, my precious student. He will help provide a sparring partner for you as you learn. It is a pleasure to meet you, Naruto-san. Lee bowed deeply at the waist. I promise I will be the best sparring partner you could wish for. Naruto was taken aback by the intensity of the pair, but their enthusiasm was quickly growing on him. Thanks, bushy brows. Lee-kun. Guy barked, regaining his student's attention. Since this style belongs to the Uzumaki clan, there will be times when I will need to instruct Naruto-kun privately. Since I am unfamiliar with the style myself, there will also be times when I will need to observe Naruto-kun's technique from the outside. In these instances, I will ask you to spar with him. Of necessity, you will be exposed to some aspects of the style as the two of you spar, but you are under strict instructions to keep silent about any secrets you may glean from your observations of the techniques. Do I make myself clear?
Perfectly clear, Gai-sensei, Lee shouted. I promise to be worthy of Naruto-kun's trust. For if I cannot do that, then how could I be called a splendid ninja? The green Jonin buried his face in the crook of his elbow, vainly attempting to quell the manly tears he was shedding out of pride for his student. Lee-kun, your flames of youth truly burn brightly, to be so willing to aid your comrade.
Gai-sensei.
Lee.
Naruto could have sworn the two were standing only a meter or so apart. Yet he watched as somehow Lee began running towards his sensei, arms outstretched, taking several steps along the sandy beach as seagulls cried and the setting sun gleamed brightly on the surf. Teacher and student embraced as a wave crashed, sending salt spray high into the air, throwing the sun's light into a beautiful rainbow that arched over them. As quickly as the vision appeared, it was gone, leaving Naruto flabbergasted and absently wiping the ocean spray from his face. What was that? Some kind of genjutsu? Before his brain could recuperate from the impossibility he had witnessed, Guy turned to face him. Now, Naruto-kun, he began, holding up the Uzumaki scroll, this taijutsu style relies heavily on footwork and mobility. The kata require that you are in constant motion, moving to your opponent's blind spots to maximize your striking potential while minimizing their opportunity to counterattack. This is a fluid style, meant to emphasize evasion and redirection over blocking. You will continually seek to create and exploit holes in your opponent's guard so that you may connect with devastating, lightning-fast strikes. Unpredictability will be your blade, and control will be your sheath. Naruto noticed in his periphery that Lee had produced a small notebook and pencil from somewhere, and was frantically taking note of his sensei's words. Before he could dwell too long on this new oddity, his attention snapped back to the now pacing Jonin. Footwork is indeed important for many variations of taijutsu, yet this scroll reveals that the Uzumaki practiced a style built from circular footwork, often considered more difficult to master. Hang on, bush your brows, sensei. Naruto raised his hand, bewildered. What do you mean, circular footwork? Excellent question. Within the art of taijutsu, most styles are built on one of three conventional patterns of footwork. These patterns are linear, triangular, and circular. The linear styles are built on the philosophy that the fastest and most efficient way to reach the opponent is a straight line. They rely on rigid stances and rapid advance and retreat to overwhelm their adversary. The Hyuga's gentle fist is one such style. Guy dropped into a wide stance, turning his torso so that his front foot and shoulder aligned, facing Naruto. He crouched low, one arm extended, palm forward. The other hand held at his waist, palm up. He demonstrated a few quick advances and retreats, throwing palm and finger strikes as an example. Triangular footwork consists of moving toward your opponent at an angle, placing yourself in superior positions for attack and defense. The strong fist style that Lee and I practice utilizes this philosophy. Lee-kun, if you would demonstrate? The older genin quickly dropped into his taijutsu posture, torso more squared towards Naruto, with bent knees, and a slightly narrower stance. His front hand was held in front of his chin, palm facing backward, while his other hand was clenched in a fist at the small of his back. As he demonstrated his advances and retreats, he appeared to be zigzagging along the points of a diamond, randomly changing direction. The kicks he exhibited often came from the side, seeking to get around Naruto's guard. Guy continued with his explanation. The Uzumaki style uses circular movement patterns, espousing the ideas of balance and harmony. Similar to the triangular footwork of the strong fist style, circular styles move at angles with respect to the opponent, seeking to exploit blind spots and weaknesses in the adversary's form. Your goal will be to confuse your opponent with unconventional and unpredictable changes of direction. You must strengthen your legs, especially your ankles, and master your balance to excel at this style. To that end, we will start with a warm-up spar, the two of you against me. Then we will move on to conditioning our legs with 500 squats, 500 kicks with each leg, and 500 jumping kicks. After that, we will practice balance by standing on a log as it floats in the pond. Finally, we will cool down with a 10-kilometer run. Naruto's heart almost stopped at the insane workout the Jonin outlined. Then he heard the little goblin next to him chime in with, "Guy-sensei, we should increase the repetitions to 1,000 for each exercise, and finish with a 20-kilometer run. Then out flames of youth will become raging infernos of passion." Well said, my young student. 1,000 repetitions it will be. Before Naruto could finish weighing the consequences of becoming a missing nin due to murdering two of his comrades, Guy had lunged toward them, punches and kicks flying, and the spar was on. The shouts of youth from the twin green beasts of Konoha were only matched by one from the orange menace. "Kakashi Baka, I'll get you for this." Several hours later, Sasuke and Sakura were waiting in the field surrounding the Uzumaki shrine. The pinkette had arrived to find the object of her affection was waiting, leaning against a tree at the edge of the clearing. She had immediately launched into her plan to convince him to go on a date with her. However, all her coy looks and attempts to be cute and alluring had fallen on deaf ears and blind eyes, not even eliciting a grunt from the stoic Uchiha. An awkward silence had descended on the pair as they waited for their remaining teammate and sensei, that was eventually broken by the sound of something being dragged along the forest floor. The source of the noise was soon revealed to be Naruto, looking like he had barely survived a brutal ambush as he dragged his flopping legs behind him. His orange tracksuit was torn and soiled with sweat and dirt, and his face was covered in bruises. With one final heave, he flipped himself onto his back, gasping for breath and muttering, "Naruto! What happened to you?" Sakura gasped, horrified at the state her teammate was in. "Kakashi-sensei's crazy friend and his little demon clone tried to kill me," Naruto wheezed. "I may never walk again." "Stop complaining, Naruto," Sasuke snorted. "You wanted this extra training to help you learn your clan's taijutsu." The blonde ninja added his raven-haired teammate to his mental list for revenge pranks, right below the green duo responsible for his current state. Thoughts of itching powder, glitter bombs, and stink pellets danced in his head as he slowly recovered. After a few minutes, Sakura remembered a thought that had been at the back of her mind since Naruto had found the Uzumaki genealogy. She remembered how shocked she was at the raw emotion in his voice when he mentioned his parents. "Hey Naruto," she started, "about the book you were reading yesterday, the one with your family names in it? Do you mind if I take a look at it?" "Huh. Sure, Sakura-chan." Naruto reached into his pouch and withdrew the book, handing it to her. "What you looking for?" "Just a thought I had about how we might be able to find out your parents' names." "Whoa, seriously?" Naruto jumped up, legs miraculously healed. "What's your idea?" "Give me a minute to look first." After a few tense moments of watching his female teammate flip back and forth through the pages, the excited blonde was about to press for details again when Sakura let out an aha, and turned the book around so he could see where she was now pointing. Naruto looked at the page, but could only see several names with that same death date of 23 years ago. "What am I supposed to be looking at?" "All of the entries have birth and death dates, right?" Sakura began. "Well, why are there so many listed with the same death date?" "That was probably when Uzumaki was destroyed," Naruto responded, still confused. "That's what I thought too, but what seems odd about that?" Naruto considered this for a moment, but he still couldn't see Sakura's point. It was Sasuke who was able to catch on first. If the Uzumaki clan was destroyed on that date, and this record was in Konoha, stored in a shrine most of the village thought was destroyed, who updated the records? "Exactly." Sakura beamed. "If we find any names of Uzumaki who died after that date, then there's a good chance that they could be your parents, Naruto." Blue eyes widened in understanding as he grabbed the book and began frantically reading through it. Sakura stood next to him, scanning the pages as well. Even Sasuke was intrigued enough to join in the search. After a few moments, Sakura jabbed her finger down on the page, preventing Naruto from turning it. "Here. This date is 15 years ago. Uzumaki Yashiro." Sasuke shook his head. "It can't be him, he died long before Naruto was born." "Oh, you're right," the kunoichi blushed at her oversight. After several more minutes of searching, the three had found several other entries that had either no death date listed, or a date that was after the fall of Uzushio. Senju Tsunade, no date listed. Uzumaki Sanaga, 18 years ago. Uzumaki Yutaka, no date listed. Uzumaki Katsuki, no date listed. Uzumaki Isu, 22 years ago. Uzumaki Kushina, no date listed. "It has to be one of the entries with no death date," Sasuke remarked. "The others are too long ago to be Naruto's parents." "Right, but we can rule out Tsunade-sama, since we know she is still alive and obviously got the Senju clan name from her father," Sakura added. "She was put in this book with her brother Nawaki because they were the grandchildren of Uzumaki Mito-sama." "So that leaves 3, whispered Naruto, Yutaka, Katsuki, and Kushina. "But why don't they have a date listed?" Sakura thought for a moment. Didn't Hokage-sama mention that there were a few Uzumaki living in the village after Uzushio was destroyed, but that they all died fighting the Kyuubi? They must have been the ones updating the book, but when they fell, no one was left to record the final entries. Sasuke and Sakura fell silent, noticing their blonde teammate's hands shaking as he clutched the book. His blue eyes stared, unblinking at the names of his relatives. Yutaka was the son of Yusei and Reina. Katsuki was the daughter of Akihiro and Amaya. Kushina was the daughter of Akimitsu and Nika. He inhaled sharply and suddenly. Sakura, Naruto whispered without looking up, do you have a pen? Wordlessly, the pink kunoichi pulled the requested object from her equipment pouch and handed it to her teammate. Naruto took the pen and reverently wrote in the book the death dates for his 3 clansmen. October 10th, 65. There is someone left to complete the record. There is someone left to remember, Naruto continued writing as he spoke, voice still a whisper. These will not be the final entries. The spark that had ignited within Naruto the day he found the Uzumaki shrine, that had grown to a flame when he vowed to bring his clan back, was becoming an unquenchable fire with each scratch of the pen. He had noticed something his teammates had not yet mentioned. Uzumaki Yutaka had a wife and 2 sons. All had died at Uzushio. Uzumaki Katsuki was 44 when she fought the Kyuubi. He finished writing and returned the pen to Sakura. Then, he held up the book, showing a new entry. Uzumaki Naruto. Born October 10th, 65. Birthplace, Kanahigaku no Sato. Son of Uzumaki Kushina. When Kakashi arrived at the training ground, the 3 genin were still silent from the recent revelation. Sakura was glancing nervously between her 2 male teammates. Sasuke was brooding more heavily than usual, staring into the middle distance, his mind walking again through the Uchiha district. Surprisingly, Naruto was participating in the somber silence, though he was staring at the book still held in his lap. The silver-haired jonin had to clear his throat twice before any of them noticed his arrival. Kakashi-sensei! Sakura exclaimed, I didn't see you there. No comment on me being late today? Alright, what happened? He questioned. The pink-haired kunoichi looked to Naruto again, I figured out who my mother was, the blonde responded, snapping the book closed. Her name was Kushina. Kakashi did not reply immediately. He gazed at Naruto with a strange look in his eye, as if contemplating something. Finally, he sighed, then smiled, closing his eye. Alright team, we're going to see the Hokage. What? Sasuke asked, shaken from his reverie, but we haven't finished the mission yet. True, but there is something I need to discuss with Sandaime-sama, and there's no better time than the present, Kakashi replied brightly. And I have an idea for the rest of the mission. Sakura and Naruto were equally perplexed. Was this brought on by Naruto discovering his mother's identity? If she was just a refugee from Uzushio, then what would be the problem? Naruto stood, placing the Uzumaki genealogy into his pouch. Alright, sensei. What's your idea for the mission? Are we gonna come back later? Just make 3 or 4 shadow clones, Naruto, and have them finish the catalog. Once they are done, have one of them bring it to the mission office, and we can review it with the Hokage. Sakura glared at her lazy sensei. You mean we could have had Naruto's clones doing the mission work this whole time? Kakashi raised his hand, stemming the tide of rage coming from his female student. No, that would defeat the purpose of the D-rank missions. I am merely making an exception in this case, since we are almost done anyway, and I think the Hokage would be interested to know about Naruto's discovery. Without another word, Kakashi turned and led the way back to the village proper. Naruto quickly made a single hand sign, conjuring half a dozen clones who immediately darted up the steps and into the shrine. The original Uzumaki noted the clones gave no indication of trouble getting through the barrier. The 3 genin hurried to catch up to their suddenly energetic sensei. Before long, Team 7 stood in the mission office reception hall, which was thankfully empty. The one-eyed copy ninja led the way up to the assignment desk, instead of trailing behind his students as usual. Iruka was the first to notice Team 7's arrival. Kakashi-san? You haven't finished the mission already, have you? You gave your interim report to the Hokage last night. Hokage-sama, I request a private debrief for the Uzumaki Shrine mission, Kakashi replied curtly. Immediately, if at all possible. This instantly caught the attention of the other Chunin at the table. They all ceased shuffling through their paperwork, and stared at the elite Jonin in shock. The Hokage met the single-eyed gaze leveled at him, but betrayed none of his thoughts. At some unseen signal, the aged Sarutobi rose, and gathering up a few papers, began leading the way toward the stairs that would take them to his office above. Iruka-kun, please handle the mission assignments while I am gone. If any B rank or higher requests come in, send for Nara Shikaku. Iruka paled. The Jonin commander? Very well, Heikage-sama. The 3 genin looked at each other in confusion. Was all this necessary? They followed the 2 older ninja from the assignment hall. As they ascended the stairs, Naruto glanced back at his old sensei. Iruka was looking anxiously after him, but otherwise gave no hint that he understood what was happening either. The Hokage's office was fairly Spartan for the head of the village. The only furniture was a large curved desk with Konoha's symbol enameled onto the front, and a short couch off to the side. The back wall was dominated by several windows that afforded a spectacular view of the village below. A small bookshelf filled with books, scrolls, and loose paperwork sat to one side, and several stacks of books were placed on and around the desk for easy reach. An easel stood in front of the widows to the left of the desk, and held a canvas used for practicing calligraphy, ink and brush on a side table nearby. The only decorations were a large painting depicting the Land of Fire and portraits of the previous Hokage, Senju Hashirama, Senju Tobirama, and Namikaze Minato. Hiruzen sat behind his desk and leaned back, slightly, lacing his fingers in front of his chin. Now Kakashi-kun, what did you find between last night and this morning? Kakashi said nothing, and went to admire the portraits of the Hokage, his previous intensity seemingly evaporated. Naruto glanced at his teammates, who both shrugged in reply. After a moment, Kakashi spoke, though he did not turn from his examination of the pictures. Imagine what they would say to us if they could see and hear what we have made of their dreams in their absence. It would be both amazing and terrifying, I think. Wouldn't you agree, Hokage-sama? Hiruzen's eyes widened and his brow crinkled in worry, even as he responded, it would only be terrifying if we had not done our best to carry on the will of fire as they intended. He then made a hand sign, and touched the corner of his desk. What did you find, Kakashi-san? Gone was the friendly elder. Before them now sat the professor, hailed as the god of shinobi, and strongest of the 5 Kages. Kakashi went to stand before the desk, and bowed low. Then he straightened, his eye crinkled in a smile. It seems Naruto-kun has discovered his mother's name, and subtly slid the little finger on his right hand behind its neighbor. The sharp-eyed Sarutobi noticed the movement, and the sudden tightness in his shoulders eased, if slightly. The 3 genin, confused by the bizarre exchange of words, were oblivious to the unspoken signal between the 2 senior ninjas. The Hokage leaned forward and met Naruto's gaze. I am happy you've learned her name, Naruto-kun, though I am sorry you had to find out this way. He could see the rage rapidly rising in the young blonde's eyes, and hurried to attempt to cool it before more harm could be done. Please, Naruto-kun, give me a chance to explain before you ask any questions. Unfortunately, he was too late. You knew my mother? You lied to me again. Why should I trust anything you have to say? Naruto exploded. Hiruzen winced, both at the volume and the accusations, but this was the price he would have to pay for his decisions. He noticed Kakashi was staring out the window, seemingly ignoring the scene unfolding before him, but the look of self-righteous vindication in his eye was clear. The old Hokage shot his own look of irritation at his subordinate. Naruto-kun, I know you are angry, and you have every right to be, Hiruzen began, but you must understand, I had very good reasons for keeping your mother's identity a secret. Good reason? Good reason? Naruto shouted, raising his fists and taking a step forward, a flash of crimson in his eye. A heavy hand on his shoulder stopped him short, and he angrily looked up to his sensei. The remorse he saw in that one visible eye shook him from his rage enough to regain control, and he stepped back with a huff, hands returning to his side. He looked away, unable to stomach seeing one of the few people in the village he thought he could trust. His gaze fell on the canvas, which held a simple seal and several lines of calligraphy. He traced the smooth, graceful brush strokes of the seal with his eyes, and felt his rage subside a little further. As he continued to look at the seal, he thought he heard a whispered word brush across his mind. Barrier. After a moment, he returned his blue-eyed gaze back to Hiruzen, the fire contained, but not quenched. Fine. What reason could you have, Hokage-sama, for keeping my mother a secret from me for 12 years? His sensei's hand squeezed his shoulder, lightly and briefly. Sakura was trembling slightly from the tension in the room. She nervously looked between her teammate and her Hokage. She had no idea where that sudden flash of malicious intent from the normally happy-go-lucky blonde had come from, but she hoped she would never see his face so twisted with rage and hatred again. Even Sasuke looked worried enough to break his stoic facade, and he kept glancing to the door as if wishing he were anywhere else. Neither of them had noticed the Sandaime raise his hand slightly when Naruto started forward, though they did see him return it to his desk when the blonde turned back to him. Hiruzen sighed deeply, rubbing the bridge of his nose, but he looked up, and met Naruto's gaze once more. Your mother, Uzumaki Kushina, came to Konoha as a child, only 9 years old, as part of a small delegation of Uzumaki at the behest of Mito-sama. She was chosen to perform a vital service for the village, one that she was best suited to. This service unfortunately also made her a target for enemies to Konoha. In fact, she was almost kidnapped 3 years after her arrival by a small band of ninja from Kumogakure, the village hidden in the clouds. Luckily, she was rescued by a Konoha ninja, who would later become known as the Yellow Flash. The Yondaime saved my mother? Naruto looked to the portrait of his hero, the 4th Hokage, his admiration for the man increasing. Hiruzen nodded. Yes, he did. However, the incident forced us to be even more secretive of your mother's identity and status within the village. It also forced us to keep any knowledge of her son secret as well, since it would have made you a target also, my boy. The old Hokage reached into his desk and withdrew his pipe, quickly stuffing it and lighting it with a small flick of fire chakra. After a few puffs, he continued his explanation. Kushina was one of the strongest kunoichi Konoha has ever known. When she came to the village, she soon became renowned as the red-hot-blooded habanero, due to her fiery hair and matching temper. Hiruzen chuckled, and looked to Naruto. She also shared a dream with you, my boy. She vowed to one day become Hokage. The first female Hokage of the Leaf Village. Naruto beamed at the knowledge his mother shared his aspirations, but it was Sasuke who spoke up next. What did Naruto's mother do for the village that made her such a target? She was chosen to be Midosama's heir to the Uzumaki legacy in Konoha, Hiruzen replied, a responsibility that has been passed on to you, Naruto-kun. Sasuke looked puzzled. You mean the shrine? But there isn't anything in there that would make anyone a target for enemy ninja, aside from maybe the masks. There is more to the Uzumaki legacy than the shrine, Sasuke-kun. As Hokage, I have decreed it to be an S-class secret, and it is to remain so until such a time as I or my successor deems Naruto-kun ready to bear its full weight. The two genin turned to look at their blonde teammate, questioningly. Naruto swallowed hard. As he returned the Hokage's gaze, he saw him look pointedly at Naruto's navel and nod slightly. Naruto's eyes widened in shock as he understood what the Sandaime was referring to, and he was grateful his teammates had missed the gesture. Seeing the younger ninja beginning to understand, Hiruzen cleared his throat, calling attention back to himself. When the Kyuubi attacked, Kushina valiantly headed to the battlefield, despite being severely weakened from complications related to your birth, Naruto-kun. Her assistance proved instrumental to the fourth Hokage's success against the beast. Sakura gasped. Naruto's mother helped Yondaime-sama defeat the nine-tailed fox? She looked at her blonde teammate in a new light. To think he was the son of such a powerful kunoichi. Yes, Sakura-chan, the Sandaime nodded. She used her adamantine sealing chains to erect a barrier around the fox to prevent any more of its attacks from targeting the village, and she also used her chains to bind the beast in place while the fourth performed his final jutsu. Without her assistance, though it cost her life, the village would have suffered even greater casualties and destruction. The old Hokage bowed his head, remembering that terrible night. Before she died, she told me your name, Naruto-kun. I have done what I could to protect you since that day, both as the heir of a great clan and ally to Konoha, and as the son of one of my dearest friends and one of the greatest women I have ever known. I am sorry that meant I had to keep your mother's identity a secret. The village was too weakened to allow the world to know who you were born to. Silence draped over the room like a heavy blanket at the conclusion of the Hokage's words. Naruto didn't like that the Hokage had kept his mother's identity a secret from him all these years, but what was done, and there was no point in dwelling on it too long. If it had meant the village was a little safer, then so be it. He would be getting more information about his mother's connection to the Kyuubi, however. He'd make sure of that. After a few moments, he suddenly twitched and looked up in confusion. Kakashi turned to him. Naruto? Is something wrong? No, sensei. At least I don't think so. My clones finished with the mission, and one of them is on the way here with the catalog. Naruto scrunched his face, not understanding where this knowledge had come from. But how do I know that? The Hokage began to chuckle. It seems you have discovered the shadow clone technique's main strength. He blew a smoke ring up to the ceiling. It was created by my sensei, Senju Tobarama-sama, as a method of scouting an area without endangering the user. When the shadow clone is dispelled, it transfers everything it has seen and learned back to the user. It's quite a brilliant technique. Stars shone in Naruto's eyes at the discovery that he was using a jutsu created by the second Hokage. It seemed to have more use than he had originally thought, and his prankster brain was beginning to whir with the possibilities. Hiruzen cleared his throat and tapped out his pipe. Perhaps you can give me a summary of what you found while we wait for the full catalog? The genin regained their focus, and Sakura began the report, displaying her impressive memory with her account of the contents of the shrine. She gave brief descriptions of the tapestries and portraits within the sanctuary, as well as the stored clothing and other cultural items, before listing off the masks that hung on the wall. The Hokage listened intently, especially to the account of the masks. It is good to know Kichijoten-san's work survived the years of abandonment. Those are possibly the last surviving examples of pure Uzumaki jutsu in the elemental nations. You knew about Kichijoten-oba? Naruto asked, surprised. Yes, mostly by reputation, though I did meet her once or twice in my time. What was she like? She was an exceptional woman, a brilliant and talented ninja. She learned Fuinjutsu from Uzumaki Ashina himself, but her application of the art in her masks was truly innovative. She was a devout perfectionist, and was constantly seeking to improve her art and discover new ways of adding to her repertoire of masks. She was also quite gregarious, and had a great love for her family and village. Naruto nodded, recognizing many of the traits the Sandaime described from his reading of Kichijoten's journal. He wished he could have met her. Realizing that she was a contemporary of his own Hokage made him understand just how recently Yuzushio had been destroyed. The shrine contains a small library, with a collection of journals and biographies of the Uzumaki clan. Sakura continued her recitation, though there are also several volumes of old mission reports and other village records, a book of basic Fuinjutsu by Uzumaki Ashina-sama, a scroll describing the Uzumaki clan taijutsu style, and a book of genealogy for the Uzumaki clan. The third Hokage brightened. A genealogy? I'd be most interested in seeing that. Naruto pulled the book from his pouch and handed it to the Hokage, who gratefully received it. After a few moments of perusal, he let out an ah of understanding. I didn't realize Kushina-chan was Kichijoten-san's niece. That explains your address of her, Naruto-kun. Kichijoten-san is really your aunt? Sakura questioned, surprised. Naruto nodded. Yeah, I noticed it when we were looking for who my parents were. Mom was the daughter of Kichijote-nobu's younger brother. Then it is even more fitting that you are beginning to practice with those masks, and Naruto-kun? Kakashi spoke up with a ruffle of the blonde Uzumaki's spiky hair. If you are planning on taking up your aunt's legacy, you will want to begin learning sealing as soon as possible, Hiruzen added. I don't know how she applied Fuinjutsu to her masks, but I do know it was integral to their function. Naruto rubbed the back of his head. Yeah, I hope Ashinaji's book can help me with that. He suddenly brightened. Kakashi-sensei, can you teach me anything about sealing? Kakashi chuckled sheepishly. Well, I'm no Fuinjutsu master, so I'm afraid I can't teach you much more than the basics. An idea was beginning to form in the Sandaime's head, a way for him to make up for some of the pain his decisions had caused the young blonde. It might also be a way for him to repay his old friend for his sacrifice. He held his peace for the moment, though, needing to work out a few details and not wanting to give the appearance of favoritism. It may be time to put out a message to a certain old toad, as well. At that moment, Naruto looked up. My clone just delivered the catalog to Iruka-sensei. He is bringing it up now. Excellent, the Sandaime replied. Please continue the summary. What is the physical condition of the shrine? Sasuke stepped forward this time. The ground surrounding are overgrown with grasses and other vegetation, but would take minimal effort to restore. The structure itself is in advanced disrepair. The entrance shows extensive damage, and the walls and roof have numerous holes. Despite this, the interior is surprisingly well preserved, showing little in the way of weather damage. He finished his portion of the report, and stepped back, coldly professional. That is likely due to the protection seals Mito-sama inscribed into the structure, Hiruzen mused, stroking his beard. Did you happen to notice the condition of the seals? Sasuke looked perplexed, but Naruto perked up at the mention of the seals. Yeah. After you guys left the first day, Hinata-chan showed up to offer her help. She used this really cool Ijutsu and found the seals around the shrine. Naruto began waving his arms in excitement. There is one by the door, but there are some scorch marks on it, like it had been burned. The Sandaime nodded. That sounds like the protection seals were partially overloaded, probably because of the QB. I recommend that the whole structure be inspected to locate the seals and assess the damage. Were any of them operational? Yeah, they put up this barrier thingy that kept Hinata-chan from getting through, but I couldn't feel it. That is to be expected. They are likely key to allow only those with Uzumaki chakra signatures through the barrier when it is active. Unfortunately, we will have to wait until Konoha's seal master returns to the village to give them a proper inspection. I'm afraid they may prove beyond the capabilities of most of our ninja. At that moment, a red light began flashing on the Hokage's desk, drawing the attention of everyone present. Ah, that must be Iruka-kun. The old Sarutobi reached out and touched the light, which Naruto could now see was emanating from a small seal on the corner of the desk. A strange feeling swept over the occupants, almost like a bubble popping around them. Then the door opened, admitting the academy teacher turned administrative assistant. Hokage-sama, Naruto-kun's clone delivered this and asked me to bring it to you. He held out the scroll Team 7 had used for the catalog. The Hokage stood and accepted the document. Thank you, Iruka-kun. I think we are just about finished here. Team 7, I will enter this mission as successfully completed. Based on the description of the damages, the repairs may take longer than anticipated, especially with the other inspections that will need to be made. The three genin and their sensei stiffened to attention as their commander came around his desk to stand before them, I will have the catalog compared to the village records, but it seems that everything that should be there still remains. If you have any questions about what you discovered, Naruto-kun, please come and see me." With that, the old Hokage dismissed them, and they all turned to leave. "Oh, and Kakashi-kun," Hiruzen called as they reached the door. The one-eyed Jonin turned back. "You are authorized to begin teaching Naruto-kun the basics of Fuinjutsu, provided you do not neglect your other students. I expect a written plan for each of their development, containing individual goals and milestones for their improvement, as well as weekly reports on your progress towards those goals." Kakashi chuckled nervously. "Yes, Hokage-sama. This is going to seriously cut into my reading time." The impish smile from the professor indicated that he was well aware. Naruto made his way back to the Uzumaki shrine, his thoughts dwelling on what he had learned about his mother, particularly that she had some connection to the Kyuubi. What that connection was, though, he wasn't sure. He had approached the Hokage before leaving the mission office about getting the rest of his questions answered, and had agreed to meet with him later that night. Naruto had considered telling the Sandaime about the hidden basement beneath the shrine, but since he didn't seem to know about it already, it was likely that the other Konoha Uzumaki had kept it a secret. After learning how much had been kept from him for all these years, Naruto was hesitant to fully trust the Hokage with his clan's legacy. His team had all gone their separate ways after they left the mission office. Kakashi had dismissed them, claiming he needed to work on the new training plans. Sasuke had gone back to the Uchiha district to practice his own techniques, with Sakura chasing after him trying to entice him to go on a date with her. Naruto had briefly thought to offer to go out with her himself, but his heart just hadn't been in it for the past few days. He wanted some time to process all that had been revealed since he had found the shrine. For over 12 years, he had believed he was a nobody. An orphan who had to fight tooth and nail for nearly everything he had, even the right to exist. Now, within the span of 4 days, he had learned he came from a clan that predated the ninja villages themselves. He was distantly related to 2 Hokages, and his mother had been chosen to inherit the Uzumaki legacy in Konoha, which had something to do with the Kyuubi that he now held sealed within him. His aunt was a powerful kunoichi who had earned the respect of the god of shinobi himself, and her techniques had been preserved for over 2 decades and were now within his possession. He wanted to make his family proud, even if he would never know them. Ever since he had discovered the shrine, he had felt a connection to his ancestors stronger than almost anything else he had ever experienced. He would be the best shinobi he could be, and he would be Hokage, to show the world that the Uzumaki would not fade into history so easily. He soon arrived back at the shrine, the heat of the afternoon tempered by the cool breeze that danced among the grass. The old structure still sagged in the center of the clearing, though the evidence of the frequent visitations over the last few days lent it a small vestige of life. As he crossed the threshold, he paused to focus on the feeling still present from his first discovery of the place. The wave of warmth, of welcome, of home once again washed over him, and he basked in its comforting embrace. Instead of heading down to the basement, he stopped in front of the mask display. They appeared to stare down at him expectantly. The light cast from the work lights lent each mask a unique expression, seemingly ranging from gentle benediction and curiosity to arrogant appraisal. They gave the impression of bated breath, as if waiting for some signal. The air in the shrine shared the tension, and all was still, waiting to see which way the dice would fall. Naruto's face hardened with resolve. This shrine was the last legacy of his clan, their final bastion against extinction. And until he found other survivors, it fell to him to keep as much of his heritage alive as he could. The masks before him and the secret techniques held securely below were the links to an identity he had craved for as long as he could remember. He would master every jutsu in the shrine, even if it took the rest of his life. The Hokage wanted him to be ready to shoulder the burden of his heritage. He would surpass all expectations, for his clan and for himself. A mischievous smile slowly spread across his face. And he had the perfect jutsu to help him accomplish his goal. Naruto quickly made the cross-shaped hand sign of his favorite jutsu. A spike of chakra, and 50 shadow clones sprang into being. The original blonde strode in front of them like a general commanding his troops. "Alright guys, we have a lot to master if we are going to live up to the Uzumaki name." He reached into his pouch and pulled out the taijutsu scroll, handing it to one of the frontmost clones. "I want 10 of you to go through these kata like bushier brows sensei showed us this morning." The clone with the scroll saluted, "Hi boss," and lead the requested clones outside to begin. Naruto turned to the remaining bunshin. 10 of you each pick a mask and see what it does. Spar with each other, get a feel for the mask's abilities. 20 of you head downstairs. Half start going through the basic jutsu scrolls while the others work on the hijitsu. The rest of you start cleaning this place up. We can't do much to repair it yet, but we can at least get the dirt and dust out. I'm going to start going through Ashinagiji's sealing books. A chorus of agreement answered the original's orders, and the clones dispersed to their assigned tasks. Naruto followed the largest group downstairs, but instead of heading to the library, he went to the study. He sat himself at the workbench, pulled out the ancient art of sealing, and began to read. Fuinjutsu is the oldest art of Nishu. It was first practiced by Otsutsuki Hagoromo, the sage of the six paths. In the beginning, it was used to help shape and direct the flow of chakra to produce the effects of jutsu. Each brush stroke, each line and symbol, combine to create the instructions that exert the user's will on their own chakra, and the chakra of the world around them. Consider the farmer's field. In order to flourish, the crops must be watered and tended. A nearby river provides the water, and the farmer removes pests and weeds, ensuring the crops grow and yield their fruit. The farmer irrigates his land through use of a system of canals, directing the water to where it is most needed in his field. A jutsu is like the crops, the water is the chakra reserves of the ninja performing the jutsu. Pests and weeds are the lack of control and discipline the ninja must overcome to perform the jutsu correctly. From the beginning, the sage taught symbols to use in focusing the mind and sharpening the will. These symbols direct the flow of chakra to where it is needed to produce the jutsu effects, just as canals direct the flow of water to thirsty plants. If the crops receive too much water, they drown and rot in the field. Likewise, if a ninja pours too much chakra into a technique, the jutsu fails, and chakra is wasted. If pests and weeds are allowed to overrun the field, the crops choke and wither. Thus it is with jutsu when a ninja is distracted or lacks the necessary will and control over his chakra to shape it properly. Naruto paused. He'd never heard ninjutsu and chakra described in such a way. But the metaphor made sense, especially when he thought about all he had to do to take care of his plant, Uki-san. He had always been told that chakra was a ninja's power, so it followed that if he wanted his jutsu to be more powerful, he needed to pour as much chakra as he could into each technique. Even when he tried to hold back, though, his chakra was just too wild. It often felt like he was trying to fill a spoon with a geyser. Naruto grimaced. It seemed Iruka-sensei was right, he did need to improve his control. Fuinjutsu represents all of these qualities in their most pure form. Control and practice are required to make the kanji and other symbols that make up a seal accurately enough to produce the desired effect. Once one is able to accurately produce the symbols, however, very little is outside the realm of possibility. Fuinjutsu, being the precursor to ninjutsu, can produce any effect created by modern hand science. Furthermore, much of what makes Fuinjutsu so powerful, and its masters so feared, are the effects that have not yet been replicated using the limited hand signs available. Sealing and summoning items, energy, chakra, even the great beasts is only accomplished through the use of Fuinjutsu. To the creative mind, Fuinjutsu opens the door to near unlimited possibilities. Naruto continued to read, losing track of the time, until he felt a memory from one of his clones outside. He smiled, and left the study, taking the book with him. He bounded up the stairs and emerged into the library just as a small figure was entering from the main shrine. Hinata-chan! The young Hyuga jumped at his sudden appearance, and a blush quickly bloomed on her cheeks. Hello Naruto-kun, she nearly whispered. Have you finished the catalog? Naruto nodded rapidly, making Hinata's neck twinge in sympathy. Yeah, we finished it this morning, but guess what? I found out who my mother is. Hinata gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Naruto-kun, that's wonderful. Yeah, her name was Kushina, and she was super strong. She even helped the Yondaime defeat the Kyuubi by using the adamantine chains we read about last night. Hinata looked puzzled, cocking her head the same way that had caught the blonde's attention 2 nights ago. Why wasn't she mentioned in our history class? Someone who helped the 4th Hokage in such an important battle should be well known to everyone. Too late, Naruto recognized his slip. He couldn't tell her that his mother's name was hidden because of her connection to the Kyuubi without revealing his own burden. He knew his friend was smart enough to start asking some questions that he wasn't ready to answer yet. What was it the Sandaime had said? The orange-clad ninja chuckled nervously. The Hokage mentioned something about the Uzumaki legacy in Konoha making her a target, so they had to keep her name secret. Old man Hokage even said that some enemy ninja had tried to kidnap her when she was our age, but that the 4th rescued her. Something about this situation seemed odd to Hinata, but she couldn't quite put her finger on it. After a moment, she returned her attention to the young blonde before her. What about your father? Did you find out who he was? Naruto shook his head. No, he probably wasn't an Uzumaki, so his name isn't in the genealogy book. The Hokage didn't mention him either. Hinata's brow furrowed. There were too many missing pieces to see the whole picture, but there was definitely something still being hidden from Naruto. At that moment, 3 of Naruto's clones entered the library carrying some old clothes and began picking up the debris and cleaning as much of the dust and dirt as they could, reminding Hinata of her original question. Naruto-kun, when did you learn to make solid clones? And why are some sparring outside?
The blonde beamed. That's my shadow clone jutsu. I learned it the night I graduated. The Hokage said the Nidaime created it for scouting, and anything the clones learn gets transferred back to me when they disappear. I thought if I had a bunch of them practicing jutsu, it would be like I was training too. I've got more downstairs. Naruto led them to the basement training area where Hinata saw the rest of the clones hard at work practicing jutsu. Most of them appeared to be having little success, and there were several curses and shouts of frustration. Curious, Hinata activated her Byakugan and watched. One clone poured far too much chakra into the technique, and the jutsu backfired in an explosion large enough to dispel the clone and knock the two nearest to the ground, disrupting their own attempts. Naruto-kun, it looks like your clones are using too much chakra. They are overloading the jutsu.
Huh, you can tell that with your Byakugan? It sounds like what Ashinajiji was talking about in his book.
Naruto showed her the passage he had been reading from the basic sealing book. The problem I have though is how do I improve my control? I'm no good at the academy exercises.
Naruto watched his friend think for a moment. Oh, I saw a chakra control technique on one of the scrolls in the library.
You did?
That's great. Maybe it will have something that will help.
The pair headed to the library, where Hinata scanned the racks for the correct scroll. After a few moments, she pulled one from the shelf and handed it to her blonde companion. Naruto unrolled the scroll and spread it out on the table, and the two looked over the explanations it held. Many of the exercises were similar to what they'd been taught in the academy. It described sticking flower petals to various parts of the body using only chakra, balancing razor-sharp kunai on the fingertips coated in chakra to prevent injury, but one stood out as unique. This one says to visualize moving chakra throughout your body like a current of water, Hinata noted. I haven't heard of that before. Naruto nodded, then pointed at the diagram next to the description. What is this about? Some kind of dance? Hinata shook her head, though the figures depicted did appear to be dancing, but the description clarified what they were supposed to be, and no, I think it is an exercise to help visualize your chakra moving. It also has breathing exercises and meditation. There is an advanced version as well. You have to spin chakra A around different tenketsu on your body. Hinata was surprised by the advanced stages of the exercise. Gathering and shaping that much chakra to one spot was no easy feat. How are we supposed to know if our chakra is moving right? Naruto asked. Hinata shrugged. Perhaps you are supposed to feel it. Naruto thought for a moment, brow furrowed. His eyes brightened as he got an idea. Hey, could you use your Byakugan to see if our chakra is moving? The shy Hyuga hesitated, but nodded. Would you be able to train with me, then? I can show you the taijutsu I'm learning with Bushido Brow Sensei too. Hinata's heart skipped a beat. Naruto asked to train with her. It was more than she could have ever hoped for. She grew dizzy at the thought of spending so much time with Naruto, and her vision began to go black at the edges. She managed a faint whisper, however, hi, I'd like that. Naruto jumped forward, wrapping his friend in a tight embrace, lifting her from her feet in his excitement. That's great, Hinata-chan. Thank you so much. We are going to be the strongest ninja in the village. Hinata-chan? What happened, are you okay? Hinata! Several hours later, Naruto was making his way through the darkened village towards the Hokage Tower for his meeting with the Sandaime. The rest of the afternoon had been spent training with Hinata, once the girl had awoken from her fainting spell. Naruto had been worried that she was sick, and had almost taken her to the hospital, but she regained consciousness in time to assure him that she was fine. Still, he had insisted that she rest for a little while to recover, and he used the opportunity to show her the kata and the taijutsu scroll he'd been working on with Guy that morning. She looked thoughtful at his explanation of circular footwork, and had watched him closely as he performed the kata. When they decided to call it a day, it was Naruto's turn to lose consciousness as he dispelled all of his remaining clones at once. The sudden backlash of information had been overwhelming, but he had quickly awoken with many hours of accumulated memory and a massive headache to accompany it. Hinata had seemed genuinely concerned for him, which had again surprised him, but after his own assurances, she had left to return home while he headed back toward the center of the village. All these thoughts occupied his attention during the trek back to meet with the Hokage, and before he realized it, Naruto found himself once again standing in front of the professor in his office. Hiruzen carefully filled and lit his pipe, taking a few slow puffs as he prepared himself for what lay ahead. He reactivated the seal on his desk, and once again the feeling of pressure settled over the room. A pair of smoke rings danced toward the ceiling, then he lowered his gaze to the impatient blonde. Very well, Naruto-kun. I believe you have more questions for me. I will try to answer them the best that I may.
Naruto suppressed a flash of irritation at the suggestion that he still may not get all the information he wanted, but pressed on regardless. You mentioned the Uzumaki legacy in Konoha earlier today, and indicated it had something to do with the fur ball. What is that, and what does it have to do with my mother? The third Hokage sighed. Yes, I figured you'd want to know that. Since it is just the two of us, I can be a little more clear with my explanation. He set his pipe down for a moment, and leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. The fox demon sealed within you, Naruto-kun, makes you what is called a Jinchuriki, one who holds one of the tailed beasts within them. Your mother was the previous Jinchuriki to the nine-tailed fox. Hiruzen braced himself for the inevitable explosion from the blonde, so he was not prepared for the silence that met his revelation. Naruto merely looked down, shock evident on his face, and placed his palm over his navel, where the seal was inscribed on his skin. Mom was like me? He whispered. Hiruzen nodded yes. She was chosen specifically by Mito-sama for her especially potent chakra, which was uniquely suited to containing the nine tails. When Mito-sama passed, Kushina became the second Jinchuriki of Konoha. Wait a minute, Naruto looked up. The second? Yes, Mito-sama became the first Jinchuriki of the fox demon when she sealed it within herself after it was subdued by Hashirama-sama during his fight with Uchiha Madara. It seems the Uzumaki clan, with their strong life force and special chakra, are best suited for containing the beast, hence the term Uzumaki legacy in Konoha. Is that why Mom was almost kidnapped? It is. We are still not sure how those Kumo ninja discovered her identity, but because of the actions of the fourth, that secret was not taken back to the Land of Lightning, and we were much more careful in the following years. That is why I couldn't tell you who your parents were, my boy. If word were to get out, especially after we had lost so many shinobi when the fox attacked, I was not sure we would be able to protect you. But if my mom had the fox sealed in her, how did it get out and attack the village? The seal holding a tailed beast weakens during childbirth. We had taken every precaution possible, but somehow the seal was broken, and the fox escaped. Unfortunately, everyone who was with your mother during your birth was killed, so I'm not sure what happened. The nine tails appeared in the center of the village and started wreaking havoc. Our ninja forces held off the demon until the fourth was able to transport the beast to the outskirts of the village. Your mother arrived, severely weakened by both the birth and the failure of the seal, yet was still able to restrain the fox long enough to allow the yondaime to seal it within you, who was the closest suitable host. Where was my father? Wasn't he with my mother when I was born? Hiruzen sighed. He died saving your life from the Kyuubi. When I arrived after your mother's barrier fell, you were crying in her arms. She told me your name before she passed, holding your father's hand. A heavy silence descended on the pair. Naruto fought back against the waves of emotion that threatened to drown him. His eyes burned, then his vision blurred. Hot, molten tears dripped down his face, despite all his efforts to restrain them. He sniffed loudly, breath coming in shaky gasps, and he squeezed his eyes shut in an attempt to stem the flood. He wished he could picture his mother and father, even in such a terrible image as their death, but he had no face, barely even a name if that. The sudden feeling of arms encircling him snapped his eyes open. The Hokage knelt before him, and despite his anger at him, Naruto threw his own arms around the old man and sobbed. After a few moments, Naruto pulled away, wiping the tears from his cheeks. Hiruzen remained kneeling for a moment, a sad but warm smile on his face. Then he stood and returned to his chair. Naruto sniffed once more, then looked up. What was my father's name? The Sandaime considered the young ninja. Already he seemed so different from the troublemaking academy student he had been such a short time ago. The discovery of his family, his heritage, and his mother's name had aged him far too much for one so young. Hiruzen debated within himself. He could tell the boy that he was not ready to learn his father's identity. He could tell Naruto about his father's enemies, and that he would be in even greater danger if the other villages learned who he was, especially as he undertakes missions outside of the village. He stood again from his desk, turning towards the window. The village below was settling in for the night. Even at this late hour, lights still burned brightly. The will of fire was much like those lights, burning defiantly against the dark, pushing back fear and danger while offering warmth and protection for those within its glow. What he decided to do here could have a drastic effect on one of those lights. It could cause it to dim, threatening to be extinguished. It could cause it to grow brighter, to a roaring flame. But like any flame, it would draw the eye of all around, and sometimes it is best to hide a candle under a bus hell. But would that smother the flame? Hiruzen turned to face the blonde. Blue eyes stared into his soul, waiting for an answer. This boy should have been the hero of the village. But cruel fate and frail humanity had instead turned him into a pariah and robbed him of all kith and kin. Despite his title of the professor, the god of shinobi, Hiruzen felt none of the wisdom of those titles now. What should he do? What would be best to preserve his village and honor his friend's wishes? Hiruzen looked up, and the same blue eyes stared into his soul from the portrait on the wall. His resolve firmed, and he knew what he would do. Naruto-kun, your father was Namake's Minato, the fourth Hokage. Naruto gazed out over the village from the top of the fourth Hokage's carving in the Hokage monument. The night air was cool and silent. The darkness was broken by the stars twinkling above and the few late lights burning in pale imitation in the village below. The moon had long since set in deference to the coming dawn. A faint breeze blew, tousling the young blonde's hair affectionately, but the tranquility of the scene was a sharp juxtaposition to the swirling emotions he found himself once again battling. Your father was Namake's Minato, the fourth Hokage. At first, Naruto had tried to deny it. How could he, the dead last knucklehead of the academy, be the son of Yellow Flash, hero of the Third Ninja World War and widely regarded as one of the strongest shinobi to ever live? He had shaken his head in disbelief, but for once, he could detect no hint of deceit in the Hokage's eyes. He had finally gotten the whole truth from the old man. He didn't remember leaving the Hokage's office. He had no idea if the old man had said anything else or tried to stop him. Naruto simply turned and walked out the door. He couldn't think, he could barely breathe. He had no memory of his trek through the village, nor any idea how long he had been staring at the lights of the homes below. His mind was so engrossed in memories and emotions that he didn't notice the figure approaching him from his back until a large hand landed gently on his shoulder. Startled, he looked up to see spiky gray hair sprouting up behind a familiar orange-bound book. Kakashi-sensei, what are you doing here? The lanky jonin lowered the book enough for Naruto to make out his customary eye smile in the dim light. Oh, just out for an afternoon stroll and got lost on the road of life. A flash of irritation spiked through the numbness Naruto had been wrapped in since he'd left the Hokage's office. You liar, he said, though without any heat as he turned back to his vigil. And put that away. Even I'm not dumb enough to believe you can actually read in this light. Kakashi sighed, conceding the point, and returned the book to his pouch. Silence descended on the pair, broken by the soft murmur of the wind as it rustled the leaves awkwardly. Kakashi looked down, imagining the stone face on which they stood and the softer face that had inspired it. You know, he began, Yanden was my sensei once. A long time ago. Naruto glanced at his teacher, but said nothing. Of course, this was before he became the fourth Hokage. He was just a jonin, but he was already a brilliant ninja, one of the best seal masters the village has ever seen. Kakashi looked down at his blonde-haired student. Much of his skill with seals came from learning from Uzumaki Kushina, did you know? She taught him much of her clan's style of fuinjutsu. She wanted to preserve as much of her clan as she could, and she managed to save much more than I ever suspected. Naruto turned to his sensei, shock plain on his face. How did you? How did I know Kushina-san taught Minato-sensei Uzumaki-style sealing? Kakashi interrupted. I just told you I was his student, didn't I? Learning clan techniques, especially ones as complex as sealing, take a long time. Even when you have help, Kakashi gave him a pointed look, and Naruto shifted nervously. Kushina-san would often visit the training ground where Minato-sensei taught us, and they would spar and work on their own techniques while we trained. It's hard not to watch when ninja of their caliber show off their skills. Naruto wasn't sure what the Kakashi was doing, but decided to play along for now, since the jonin seemed to be in an oddly talkative mood. What were they like? The whispered phrase carried equal parts hope and fear from the young ninja. Minato-sensei was always careful. He never did anything without reason. He was also very polite and respectful. He never bragged about his skills. Most of his exploits you are probably familiar with from your academy studies. Kakashi looked to the young blonde expectantly. Naruto nodded. The lessons involving the yandame were some of his favorites and among the few he would actively participate in. The one-eyed jonin continued, then I'll focus more on what I knew of him as a person. He was usually very quiet and serious, but he could get excitable when he was close to perfecting a new jutsu. Kakashi chuckled. Kushina-san often called him an idiot genius. Kakashi paused, temporarily lost in memories of his old team, his many failures. An impatient shuffle from his student brought his attention back to the present. His lone viable eye crinkled in a smile as he looked down at the blonde. Minato-sensei was already one of the top jonin in the village when he began teaching my team. He was often called away on special missions during the war, but he always did whatever he could for us. As for Kushina-san, she was one of the kindest people I had ever met. She was one of the strongest kunoichi in the village. When she was younger, though, she was a fireball. Her first day in the academy, she declared she would be the first female Hokage. If it hadn't been for the fourth, she would have had a real shot at it. Kakashi looked down at his blonde student, already so much a blend of his parents. The changes Naruto had been through in these last few days were remarkable. The responsibilities of inheriting not one, but two great legacies were a hotter refiner's fire for the young ninja than most could have anticipated. The silver-haired Jonin prayed that it wouldn't burn his student to ash as he sought to live up to them. Naruto opened his mouth for more questions, but Kakashi interrupted again, placing his hand on the boy's head. I think that's enough storytelling for tonight, Naruto. Why don't you head home now and get some sleep? You still have to meet with Guy in a couple of hours. Naruto's face fell, and he shuddered briefly, but nodded. As he turned away to head back to the village, he paused. Thank you, Kakashi-sensei, he whispered, without turning around. Then he left, back through the trees still rustling softly in the wind. Kakashi didn't answer as took to Boy's place at the cliff edge, staring up at the stars. After a few minutes he felt the presence he had sensed before finally depart in the opposite direction from his blonde student. Satisfied that nothing further needed his attention tonight, he vanished in a puff of smoke and swirl of leaves. The next few weeks settles themselves into a pattern of Naruto meeting with Guy and Lee each morning to practice his clan taijutsu, followed by training and missions with his team. Once the daily chore was completed, Naruto retreated to the Uzumaki shrine to continue working on his clan techniques, aided by a small army of clones and Hinata. He kept the revelation of his father's identity to himself, however, following the advice of both the Hokage and Kakashi. At first he had balked at the secrecy, but after hearing of his father's enemies, he swore that he would get strong enough to bear the full weight of his identity as quickly as possible. Through all his training, he soon discovered a limitation to the Kage Bunshin. While he did remember everything his clones experienced in their training, he gained none of the physical benefits of their exercise. He made this painful discovery one morning with his spandex-wearing taijutsu teachers. Leaf whirlwind! Lee bellowed, spinning a high kick towards Naruto's head. The blonde ninja, covered in dirt and bruises,